Okay, so we've begun recording. This is the August 21st meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents for Connecticut. And so we can begin. Let's begin with the approval of the agenda.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let's move on to the approval of the July minutes. They were linked in the agenda. Motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second it.
Okay. Any discussion, modifications?
Elena, can I just clarify, today is August 20th, just for the record?
Sure.
So if I'm reporting.
Thank you. All right, so
I do have one question, Galena. There's a person, M. Majeski.
That's Lois. That's a faculty member from Dr. Valley. That's Melanie.
Hi.
Majeski. Hi, Mel.
hi, Melanie.
Hi.
Hello. Glad you're with us. All right, so let's vote on approval of the minutes. All in favor of the minutes as drafted?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Thank you all. All right. Ooh, I just minimized the meeting. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back. All right, so we're at agenda item 3. Very exciting. Thank you so much for being here with us, President Chang. And we have a few guests with us, I think. And I know for the committee members and we spoke also about kind of structuring our time together. We want to have a conversation, but it goes a little more smoothly if we have some idea of what to expect. So I think we can begin. We'll begin by introducing ourselves to you, I think, and then we'd love to hear just a few minutes from you, your sort of introduction. And then I think it's almost impossible to do justice to, I mean, this is a great group, right? To the experience in the room and the depth with which we've covered so many topics over the years. So we will do, I'm going to ask that we just kind of go around and identify issues that we see as ongoing, deserving of more attention, and that we see as priorities, and just very quickly identify them so that you get a sense of where we are and the kinds of conversations that we're having. And then we'll just open it up to chat, okay? So let's begin by introducing ourselves, and then we'll have you introduce yourself. And I guess I should begin, you know me, but Kalina C. Sankar, chair of this committee, and associate professor of philosophy at Gateway. And is there anything else I need to say? I believe that is it. David?
Hi, Dave Blitz. We've met before, President Chang. I'm a professor of philosophy at CCSU. This is my, by calculation, 32nd year, to my amazement. I've been chair of my department, director of the University Honors Program, founder and coordinator of our Peace Studies program. And I'm vice chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee.
Thanks, David. Carmen?
Hello, I'm Carmen Yamianis. I'm professor at Capital Community College, and I have been here for 23 years.
Thanks. David Stilla?
Hello, David Stoloff. I'm a professor in education at Eastern Connecticut State University, 26 years, for 26 years. And I'm also president of the Connecticut State University, Connecticut State Conference for AUP.
Are you good, friend? Oh, sorry, you're still muted, or we can't hear you yet.
Sorry, I'm slowing things down here. Francis Cohn, professor of history at Tungus Community College. I'm starting my 31st year there. I'm also president of the professional staff organization. Thanks you for joining us.
Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Long, professor of English from Three Rivers Community College, and I am the Three Rivers rep for the Connecticut Coalition of English Teachers, and I'm their rep for the PA 1240 Council as well. Thank you.
Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Wilder. I'm the administrative faculty representative from Charter Oak State College, and that's where I'm the director of prior learning assessment. Thank you for being here with us today.
Lois?
Lois Amy, Norwalk Community College, president of the College Senate in Norwalk.
Mary Beth?
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Rodcheski. I'm an associate professor of math at Untitled Community College.
Thanks. Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Shea. I was chair of the English department for about 9 years. I've been here since 1985. I just want to mention a lot of us have been here for a while. I hope you don't think, I don't think though that we're hidebound. I hope that's not something that seems to fall to our group. Like I think there's a lot of deep interest, even though we've been here, because we've been here a long time, a deep interest in wanting to ensure that things go well for students. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Mike, what institution are you from?
I'm sorry, Southern Connecticut State University.
Great, thank you.
Patrice?
Hello, I'm Patrice Farguson. I'm representing Charter Oak State College and on the Faculty Advisory Committee, and I've been with Charter Oak for 21 years designing and teaching online courses.
Ron?
Hi, I'm Ron Picard, professor of English. I've been at Naugatuck Valley Community College for 17 years. 6 years I was English department chair. 3.5 years I was associate dean of institutional research and academic affairs. And the last 2 years I was faculty senate president, and I currently chair the diversity committee for the faculty senate.
Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara Richards, professor of sociology at Housatonic, former chair of the FAC, and I've been on the FAC since it started in 2011.
Fred, oh, actually, hold on. We'll get to you, Fred. Mike Emanuel. So Mike does not have signal right now, but Mike teaches criminal justice at Northwestern Community College. And I'm sure he has other, okay, yep, that's it. Let's see, who else? Okay, so we are at guests now.
Myrna. There's Myrna.
Oh, Myrna, how did I miss you? Oh, you know what? My things are moving once people minimize or go off camera. Myrna. Oh, you're muted, Myrna, sorry.
Thank you. I was having some difficulties as well, so I apologize. I was popping in and out. My name is Mirna Garcia Bowen. I work at Central Connecticut State University, and I've been serving on the faculty council, I believe a year after Barbara indicated. I started as an alternate and have been the representative for the SWOF constituency of the system. and have had a wonderful have a wonderful relationship, and I hope to continue it. So thank you for being here today.
Did I miss any other committee members? Because now my videos have moved around. Kate?
Yes, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kate Johnson. I am the lead faculty for population health at Charter Oak, and I've been with the college for 3 months.
Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
She's newly elected, right?
Newly elected, yes.
Yes. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Hired,
So now,
hired and elected.
What's that?
Hired and then elected.
Yes. Lucky me.
it'll be fun. All right, so now guests, and I think you already know our first guest, Bill Ferracos. Do you want to go ahead, Bill?
Sure. It's nice to see you again, President Chang, and everybody else. My name is Bill Ferracos. I'm on the faculty in public health at Southern Connecticut State University, where President Chang, you might be interested to know, I'm about to start my 47th year. I served as a department chair for 33 years and 3 years as president of the Faculty Senate. But I haven't run out of steam yet, and I'm delighted to be here for this conversation.
Let's see, I'm scanning my little boxes again. Angelo, would you introduce yourself? I know you two know each other, but for the sake of the recording and others.
I
Sure.
don't know that, oh, he does have audio. Okay.
I'm just listening in today, but I'm Angelo Simone. I work in the system office doing student relations and compliance for the system.
Great. Thanks for being here. Fred?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Fred Latour. I'm an associate professor of mathematical sciences at Central, and I'm here as a guest. I'm the president of the Faculty Senate at CCSU.
Oh, these keep moving. I was just looking at someone's box and it moved. Oh, Seth?
Seth Freeman, a professor at Capital Community College and president of the Four Cs, also here as a guest.
Pam, do you want to introduce yourself just since we're all doing it for the record?
For the record, my name is Pam Helene. I'm Associate Director of Board Affairs, and I provide the administrative support for the full board and all its committees. And I am 1 week shy of my 1-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And I just like hanging out with faculty because thank you.
Pam's whole life is the record, literally. Like that's,
it's my middle name. Pam,
right.
the record, Helene.
That's a very cool nickname. And Pam just officially moved into her new office space in our office suite. So we're delighted that she's there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very
It's
sweet. Thank you.
Year, Pam, and you're always with us, but it's I think,
Always.
the first time you've been officially introduced, so that is wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. So I forgot. From Naugatuck Valley, is it Marjorie? Did I say it right? Majeski. Sorry, I'm ruining your name. I forgot your first name already.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's Majeski. Don't worry. It's Melanie Majeski. I'm
Melanie.
a professor of ESL at Naugatuck Valley Community College. I've been there since 1996. I started our ESL program there. I was chair of the ESL Council for way too long. I worked on foreign language credit and our common course numbering scheme. I'm here as a guest, and thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. All right, is that everyone? I think so. My little system of going consecutively.
Pamela Tolbert-Bynum, who's also from Naugatuck Valley.
That's right. Oh, right. No video. There we go. So Pamela?
I am so sorry.
No
Yes,
worries.
I am. This is Pamela Tolbert Bynum Rivers. I am from Naugatuck Valley Community College, English professor. Hello, Melanie. Hello, others. And I I'm here as a guest, of course, and just wanted to hear some of the updates and catch up a bit.
All right, wonderful. So thank you all, and thank you again, President Chang, for being here. And please, say what you'd like to say. Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be involved in this conversation with this group, and you all should know, I hope it's the first of many conversations. I think it's important for the system leadership to have direct communication with faculty, and that's certainly something that I will hold myself accountable to, right? Having come through the faculty ranks and understanding the world that we live in, this is important. So I'm really happy to be here. Also, I think if you feel comfortable with it, you should feel free to call me Terrence. I still kind of look over my shoulder a little bit when somebody says President Chang, and I am more than comfortable being on a first name basis. I don't think we need to stand on formalities, but again, I leave that up to you. So, I won't kind of bore you with like the how I got here. I think that's relatively well documented at this point. I'll just tell you, I think it's a real lifetime opportunity to be given this responsibility and to have the opportunity to work for a system like this and to work for all the faculty and staff across the multiple institutions and to frankly, be such an important part of our state, right? The work that we do, I don't mean me, I mean the work that we do is such an important part of our state. So that's a very, very big deal to me. So, I want to kind of get to I want to get to what you want to talk about, right? So let me hit you with a few updates. I'll tell you what I'm kind of thinking and feeling these days, and then we'll just kind of get to it. Okay, so number one, I think invariably we're going to talk about COVID, and that is at the top of our minds. Certainly on my team, the system office, I think across all the campuses, there's a lot going on, and we're doing the best that we can to try to open campuses safely and securely. Clearly, nothing is perfect, and I think what we've got going into the fall is not perfect, but it is, I think, the result of a lot of work by not only our system team, but by every single campus. So you should know that the guidance that just went out is the product of several weeks, if not months, of input and discussion that was created in collaboration with key players at each campus. So that's, and we'll talk more about COVID, I'm sure. Number two, you might have seen we've recently been announcing debt relief for community college students. Today I am at Housatonic, where we just did an event with the Lieutenant Governor and with Senator Blumenthal. We're trying to just get folks to enroll. We want them to know that PACT, we're still accepting applications. We want them to know that there's money for PACT. We want them to know that they can register tomorrow at the event and then all the way up till Thursday. So we're really, really pushing that. But the federal funds that have gone out recently, $17 million in debt relief, another $58 million announced in direct funding to students that's benefiting tens of thousands of students, on top of all the work that's already gone into the debt relief work, or I should say the trying to mend some of the damage that has happened because of COVID to our students, right? Over $167 million has already been provided to our students in some form of financial support or relief. That's a lot of money, and it's not enough to fix everything, but I think it's something that we as a system should feel pretty good about, because we really are trying to help our students as much as possible. I want to turn my email off so it doesn't keep dinging. Goodbye, email. Okay, so let's see. Next on the list, I'm out on the road, right? I have a lot to learn. I'm going to each campus. I've started last week. I've already visited WestCon, and these are like preliminary meetings. These are not like the big meetings where I'm going to meet with all the faculty and all the staff. This is just to kind of get on a campus and meet with the campus leaders first, and their leadership teams. So I've already met with WestCon. I went to Central this week. I'm at Housatonic for an event. And so, we're doing that, but we're also in the midst of scheduling literally one, if not two full days at each campus. And I really look forward to that. And those are the visits where I feel like, I'm going to spend a lot of time and not as a one-off, as more of like, let's get to it. Let's get going and help me kind of learn as much as possible. So meeting with faculty, staff, students, community leaders, administrative leaders, whoever the campus leaders tell me that they want me to meet in that day or those 2 days, that's what we're going to do. So we're orchestrating those visits for the fall. At the same time, I'm also meeting with external partners, working a lot with our elected officials and our community and business leaders already, just trying to understand where they are, what they're looking for from us, trying to align what it is that we as a system may do with what they are trying to accomplish as well, to have as many shared goals and outcomes as possible. So I'll stop there for now. It's a lot. The last thing I'll say is what is absolutely top of my mind right now is COVID and budget and enrollment. I mean, enrollment is not where we want it to be, right? That's all there is to it. I mean, and how do we fix that? So part of what I've been kind of talking to folks about is how do we go about addressing the concerns and the problems that lie in front of us together, while understanding that we need to focus on controlling what we can control. So I'll be very frank. I think one of the things we can't control is that for a small state like Connecticut, and I do mean population small, because if you take any two boroughs from New York City and put them together, they're probably bigger than the population of Connecticut, right? And yet, if you look at the number of institutions in our system and the number of institutions of higher ed across the whole state, there are a lot of colleges and universities in Connecticut. We can't control that. I can't control that. But what we can do is say, okay, well, how do we look at the landscape and try to figure some things out? We cannot control the demographics of the country with the number of college age, college ready students. We cannot control that demographic within our state. So I think there are a lot of things that certainly worry us and challenge us, but focusing on what we can and can't control. What we can control is how we serve our students. What we can control is the kinds of academic programs that we offer them, the value propositions of our institutions and our specific campuses and our specific academic and student support endeavors. So now I am going to shut up, and we're going to open it up, and I'll follow Kalina. She's the boss of this group. So thank you.
Thanks so much. And yeah, it is an enormous task, and it is, we cover a great range of not only different institutions, locations, types of institutions, right? So we definitely know one of the things in preparation for this meeting that I heard clearly from folks is that we want to offer ourselves as a resource, because this group is designed to sort of hit most of the aspects of the system that are important. So, in the spirit of doing precisely that, I'll open it up now for 15 to 20 minutes of just kind of throwing the issues out there, the kinds of where we are in terms of what we're concerned about and what we're thinking about. So just feel free to raise a hand, and I'll call on you, I guess might be the best way to do it.
Well, hey, it's been great talking to you guys. So I'm going to go eat lunch now. I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah.
Easiest job in the world. We have no.
Right. I was about to say this is the easiest meeting we've had all day. I'm just kidding.
Colina, do you want to speak first? Don't you have some issues from the agenda, or you were going to bring up?
Those were issues that folks that were out there, and I want, I think that, anyone who wants to speak to any of those issues or any others could go ahead, right? We had a collection of issues that I will check and make sure that if any of those are not covered by members who want to speak to them, that I'll mention them at the end. If we want to kick it off, I will say something, maybe just in response to the concerns that we have right now about enrollment, because there's a real tension, right? We need enrollment. We know we need enrollment. We're also looking at our students and understanding that just as all of us are overwhelmed, many of them are overwhelmed too, and pushing towards greater enrollment is not always in their interest. And the fact that we have to be so focused on enrollment is everything to do with the way that our system is funded and the comparison between how it was funded, let's say in the 80s and before, and the way that it's funded now. So that in that respect, at least, we cannot prioritize what our students might really need on an individual basis, because collectively they will all lose if we don't have the resources to serve them well. So it, on the very large, big picture kind of, view, it would be wonderful if we can get ourselves to a place where we are funded so that we don't have to make those sorts of decisions, so that we are more resilient when we have downturns like this, when we have issues like this, where we can focus on what students need in every respect, as opposed to, trying to balance those two things. So that's something that just came to mind because that enrollment thing really is a priority. But sorry, go ahead.
Before I forget, can I ask a clarifying question? So, and I hope this doesn't cut you off, Mike, but I do think it's important, right? Because part of the value of this conversation and this relationship, and I do use that word intentionally, like relationship between the system office leadership and the faculty advisory committee or any faculty group, right? I think it's important to have a kind of understanding of what we think, what we feel, why we think and feel certain things, right? Not just kind of where we've landed, but how we've kind of gotten here, I think is important. If we all understand that enrollment and budget, and again, I want to make sure we kind of level set this appropriately. So I won't speak for you. I will say, I feel that enrollment and budget are intertwined, and they're both clearly under pressure, and they're not where we would want or need them to be sustainable in terms of any fiscal model. But I guess my question is, why do you all think enrollment has been going down for 10 years, if not more? Because I think if we don't kind of share at least a similar or somewhat basic understanding of what those concerns are, it will be challenging to try to address them together, right? Like, so if you think about, I'll just use a very bad kind of analogy, right? Like if you're in a relationship with someone and it's not going well, and you think it's because of how they spend money, and they think it's because, you have like a chemical dependency of some kind, I don't know, right? I'm being kind of hyperbolic here. You're not going to fix the problem if you don't agree on the same set of concerns. So I would love to genuinely get your feedback on this, because I have plenty of ideas, but I'm not exactly sure what the faculty think is the cause of our enrollment decline.
Well, I actually was, what I was going to follow up with what Colina said, addresses that a little bit. I think it's expense. I mean, I think I know it's a national trend, and I think, in fact, Connecticut is actually sadly on the better end of this, how bad things are in terms of the percentage of support that public universities get from states, right? And Connecticut still gets a decent amount, but it's still way not enough, right? But I think that the student body we serve, I think so many of them work while they're going to school. If you think of how many hours they have to work to make a certain amount of money for tuition, all that work time cuts into studying time. At $15 an hour, if you're lucky that you have a job that pays that much, you need to work a lot of hours just to meet the tuition. So I think it seems to me, I just cannot believe that the system office hasn't done a better job of trying to talk to the legislators about, moving in the opposite direction from the rest of the country and supporting public higher ed as a public good. I mean, if anything we've learned in the last 5 years, it's how powerful ignorance is. And you would think that in a democratic state, they would be willing to invest in educating the public so that you don't have a bunch of climate deniers and science deniers. We just want fewer and fewer of that kind of citizen. So I think they're not coming because they can't afford it, given how much they have to work, or they go and I think if we made it a lot cheaper by having a much higher percentage supported by the state of the tuition instead of being tuition-driven institutions, I think we could help students more and make better choices. So I don't know what others think.
So I know there are hands going up, and that's important, and I want to make sure. And I'll spend as much time with you all as you want, right? So today and the next time or whatever it is. My style is to basically talk, listen, ask questions, talk more, listens, ask more questions. That's dialogue to me, right? It's to be able to honestly go back and forth. So Mike, you made a couple comments, and I think I understand your expense concern. I share that concern when it comes to our students who, and again, I've only been president of this system for 49, 50 days, something to that effect, right? But I come from public higher ed. I've worked the last, 5.5 years at UConn Stanford. Many of the CSCU students became UConn Stanford students. I know these students too, right? And I know public higher ed students in urban campuses and so forth. So I get it, right? I'm working, I got a family, the investment. This is about investing my time, my money. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it possible? I'm with you there. You made a comment about you're surprised that the system office hasn't done a better job of basically getting the legislature to give us more money. Is that a fair summary of what you said? Okay, so
yeah, and I don't mean to indict the system office as much as I don't know what they've done. I just know that we haven't succeeded.
Well, so that I want to pick on that point, because without your clarifier, I would ask questions such as, what understanding do you have of what the system office has or has not done? And what evidence do you have that the system office is in default or is derelict in that duty? Because that is, and again, I'm going to be very straight up with you, right? That's exactly what I heard. I don't take that personally, because like I said, I've been president for 5 minutes, right? That's not me you're pointing a finger at. You're pointing a finger
I think that's a fair state. I understand that. All I'm saying is the only thing I have as evidence is, and I don't know the efforts. I just know that it hasn't been as successful as it should be. So good. Yeah, I accept your point.
Okay.
I'll take a little privilege here. So each one of the issues that will come up, and I think this is one of the larger, more foundational issues that frames everything that's happening in the system. So I love that we're having a little back and forth on it. But if you would prefer that we don't do what we were doing before, Terrence, almost said President Chang, if you would prefer that we get just a little bit of back and forth with each issue, what I'll do is take the privilege of sort of like cutting it off just so we can get to the next as we go.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want the full picture. But I believe that Jen and Myrna both have hands up, and I believe it might be on this also.
Moderate, Kalina, moderate as you see fit. Like, you're the chair of this group, and I'm happy to be bossed around a little. So go for it.
And I will just say that I don't believe I mentioned this part, in my new role as political director for the 4Cs, I got to talk a bit with Sean Bradbury. So, and he does excellent work. And I'm really impressed with the way that the system does work within the parameters that we currently have to get funding for the state. The issue is that the parameters are just so, like the status quo is just so far from what can really, really be. So I don't see this as an accusation of the system office or anything else. This is a much larger cultural statewide kind of movement that has to be achieved only through cooperation between us and the system office and everybody else, and anybody else we can get on board.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
I do have an ACME policy comment that I'd like to make a little bit later, but I just wanted to respond to your question, if I may, about why in the last 10 years things have been problematic for graduation. So I've been teaching college English for about 21 years now, and I've been at Three Rivers for 16. And when I came to the college, my program was one of the only ones in the Northeast that was NAID certified. And we built the program, I'll speak for English directly, where we had 2 levels of English reading and writing that were separate, and then an integrated reading writing, and students could opt into the classes they wanted. And when Beth Bai wrote the PA 1240 legislation that essentially truncated all of developmental into 1 semester of remediation, we lost that longstanding certification, and it was frustrating. And then what we found with PA 1240 was that all of these dollars were promised to us. So they told us to think big and collaborate across the campuses, and we did that. And the Connecticut Coalition of English Teachers rewrote outcomes, and we did everything we could to work with the PA 1240 Council to make this a success. But what happened was they still collected data that wasn't nuanced data to critique our programs, and all the money that was funded was reallocated out of the classroom, away from the embedded tutors and away from the promises, and into each dean balancing their budget. So really, I think the issue of the money, and when I went to Senator Bai and I told her, you know, like this is essentially what's happening here with these dollars, she said that that's absolutely not what that money was earmarked for. It wasn't meant for deans to balance their budgets. It was meant to go to embedded tutoring, because the idea behind PA 1240 and her work with Peter Adams, it was to get students into the higher level classes where they could follow an ALP model, where you have half developmental, half college ready, all in one class with intensive embedded instruction. And with the absence of that instruction and the absence of being able to fund the very policy that they recommended, we had to scramble to do the best we could. And it is amazing that the faculty, going from something like 9 to 12 and 15 credits down to 6, were able to sustain the same level of pass rates, even with so many fewer resources, knowing that the money that was earmarked for us was taken from us. So that's a little bit of context about the kind of mistrust, because we're seeing the same thing with the guided pathways policy, where we know we need embedded tutoring. We need things like help with the childcare for students and healthcare and all these other big things that would make the world better, right? But they are opting to take so many federal dollars and hire a whole bunch of advisors whose sole purpose will be to put students who are underprepared into 12 to 15 credit hours that they can't handle, and try to, you know, make things look good on a chart. But the reality is that no one's asking the teachers what they're doing and what the students can actually do. So I'll speak to that a little bit later if I have some time, and I may, but I just wanted to provide you with that context, that I could give you many, many specific examples of long-standing mismanagement of funds for dollars earmarked to be in the classroom. And that is largely the faculty frustration from my perspective. Thank you.
That's helpful to me. And what I would say is, if there is, look, I've never been a president before, okay? But I've been a human being for a while. And I feel like the best way to be a human being is to just kind of have integrity and to be honest and to be transparent. And you know, I fired my ambassador a long time ago. So what you see is what you get, right? Folks are going to say things. I'm going to ask questions. I will never pretend to know things I don't know. And I will never speak to things that I don't, you know, have information on, right? So you tell me that there's been budgetary or fiscal mismanagement of certain things. I have no reason to not believe that you have seen or experienced something, right? What I would say as the leader of the system is, if there is evidence of that, I would be happy to see it, right? I would be more than happy to see it, because that's a problem, right? And if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, especially with federally allocated funds, then you know, I want to know that, you know, and I want to understand that, and I want to try to tackle the problem, right? Because I will always accept a certain level of distrust, or let's just say, you know, skepticism. Distrust is too strong a word. I will always accept a level of skepticism between a faculty sensibility and an administrative sensibility. And trust me, you know, in my heart of hearts, I'm still a faculty member, right? And I get it. And so there are times where even in my past institutions where I'm a senior administrative leader. And when I put my faculty hat on, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about this one, right? That always kind of, it's always in the back of my head. But long-winded way of me saying, I will always listen, but there are times where when we're talking about certain things, we can't fix problems without evidence that we can take action on, right? Even if it's to understand history or historiography, I would still need to see certain things to try to understand them, unpack them, and then connect some dots to see if there's action to be taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't want to overtake my time, but I can just tell you that I did meet with people and get the budgets and see things. And I just give you a very quick example of the evidence that I do have documentation of, where what they did as an example was they would say, okay, well, we have to pay these faculty salaries to balance our budget. And so they would pull the money out of the embedded tutoring for the tutors to be in the classroom to help facilitate the program. And they would say, okay, well, anybody who has any connection to developmental, we're going to lump their salaries into that and say, here, we spent these PA 1240 dollars on developmental. But that's not what the money was allocated for. So there's all of these ways that things on paper can look legit, and I suppose they are, but that's not what the intention was of Senator Bay's vision, and it's not what the faculty were sold were going to be supplements and helpful for the actual work. Because as you know, what matters to the faculty is what's happening in the student support in the classroom. So I'm not saying that there was anything illegal that was happening, but if you really look at where the dollars are meant to be spent, I think that that's where some of the frustration is. So I could give you countless examples of evidence of that, speaking to many deans over the years about it. But you know, you probably clearly have been in higher ed long enough to know that what happens there's a ton of initiatives, money's thrown at it, and then they kind of peter out because the money doesn't, you know, stick with the initiative. And I think that that's a concern, right? So, I appreciate your points, and I hope I didn't sound flippant, but I just wanted to respond to that.
Again, you know, I hope you all understand. I'm asking just genuine questions, right? Because I don't know, and I want you all to know that I'm serious about this stuff, right? I'm serious about how we handle our funds. I'm serious about how we handle how we support students, how we support faculty, how we do the things that we're here to do. You know, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If any of us were focused on ourselves and our riches and being capitalist, you know, rapacious raiders who were going to, you know, basically mine Bitcoin all day, we would do that. We didn't do that. We decided we wanted to be in higher education, public higher education. We decided, as you can tell from just listening to how long folks have taught here, right? These are your institutions, your life's commitment, your life's work. I respect that, and I have enough respect for it to ask you very kind of straightforward questions if I have them, right? And so I think your clarifier is very helpful to me in that, you know, there is always a way to interpret guidance that comes from the feds or comes from the state when it comes to the use of funding. And there are going to be times where we have agreements or disagreements in terms of how that funding is utilized, right? And so I think it's helpful to draw that line between, you know, clear misappropriation or dereliction of duty related to financial stewardship versus, you know, I don't want to sound trite, say a difference of opinion. It's not a difference of opinion. Maybe it's a difference of sensibility or philosophy or so forth. So you know, anyway, I got a feeling Kalina's going to tell me to shut up. So
all right, so I own it, Myrna, and then Ron, and then I would want to make sure that we move on to at least a selection of other issues, because like I said, we are not going to be able to do justice to any one of the issues that we talk about. So I do want you to get a sense of the sort of range and character of the kinds of things that each are going to deserve this level of conversation with you.
Yes.
I mean, even just this little bit, there are all these documents that we would need to send to you and so on to really have a fuller conversation. So yeah, go ahead, Myrna, and then Ron, and then I see that Mary Beth is in line also.
Thank you. President Chang, early on, I introduced myself as the representative for SWOF. And as you know, we are the administrative faculty for the university system. And most of the individuals within our SWOF membership are the members in enrollment management, under which I serve. And so one of the things we have all been very much aware of when you talk about enrollments is the inexorable decline in birth rates, to the point where, you know how you can control some things you had indicated in your comments and you can't control, well, you can't control the birth rates, right? And so today is a result of those declines in birth rates for our traditional students. So what do we do as the faculty administrators that have processes in place to enroll? And one of the other things I wanted to mention that lends itself to Jennifer's point is our recruitment efforts are as good as the retention efforts on the other end. And what I mean by that is if we could recruit students and keep them on campus, that helps the enrollment, right? Because that's less that we have to really potentially bring in to meet the numbers or the goal marks of those institutions. I believe strongly that I don't know if this is fact. I don't have the evidence, but I never hear anything included in the edict of enrollments that we understand that there is a decline in the population that we have to bring in for each class every year. And that has to be taken into account. That doesn't mean that the individuals that are recruiting and contributing to enrollment are not doing the best they can under the conditions. And so one of the other things that I would like to also talk about at a later time would be the resources that are needed at the front end so that we can tap into other types of students for the institutions. For instance, I work with transfer students, and we know that's a really diverse population, preparing them to transition and get their baccalaureate degrees, associate degrees first, obviously, and then baccalaureate degrees. But you need resources to be able to recruit them and retain them and meet them where they are. So I just think if and when you're planning, and this part is tie in the recruitment end, the support for the recruitment end, and also the retention end, which lends itself to what Jennifer says in terms of making sure that these students are prepared for the next level of their education.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? We probably, I don't know who the collective we is in this case. I mean, again, I'm an evil administrator, so this is the world I work in, and the data and the trends and all that kind of stuff. We've known about the declining birth rates for over a decade.
Right.
I mean, we know it. I guess the question I would ask is, how have we adjusted? Not we, your campuses, this system. How have we in higher education adjusted to prepare? If I'm and this might irritate some of you, but I'm going to take that chance, right? If I'm running a business and I have data coming in that says my customer base is starting to change, right? Well, I got to start making changes or else my business is going to be in trouble. Now, I'm not comparing higher ed to a business. I'm sorry I used that somewhat kind of pedestrian analogy, but you see my point, right? How have we adjusted as higher education? And what, I think the answer is we probably haven't adjusted nearly as much as we should have.
That's right.
And so that is where we are right now. And I think that is a challenge that I want to work on together with the faculty. The faculty control the curriculum. The faculty control the pedagogy. The faculty are the front line with our students. When they have a problem, they don't come to me. Well, some of them come to me and I send them back to someone else. But be that as it may, they're going to go to you first because you are with them in the classrooms. They trust you. They know you, and so how do we do the things we need to do to adjust to this new paradigm, this new landscape, which unfortunately is not new. I think we're in the middle of it right now, and we're going to be barreling towards the end of it. And then what I would say as well to some of your points is that I agree with you. Listen, more resources, absolutely. I've had very good relationships with my enrollment management colleagues at every single institution. You know, I'll just tell you real quick, as a department chair in English at Lehman College, I went to my admissions director and I said, hey, I need more English majors and I love this college and I want to build the enrollment. So what can we do? She said, let's go on the road together, right? Let's go talk to counselors. Let's go talk to principals and vice principals. And we did that. We went all around Manhattan. We went all around the Bronx. We got yelled at a lot, which I thought was interesting, but that's okay, right? Because they let us know what we were doing right and wrong. And I learned a great deal from that. But to me, that was kind of the beginning of my investment in terms of what do I as a faculty member and as a faculty leader contribute to enrollment and retention every single day, you know? And I think that's a tough, you know, not to put more work on the faculty. The faculty, you all are doing plenty, right? But I do think that this is something that we can potentially fix together, because then when we get out there and we're recruiting, let's recruit them into something that we have built together to adjust for this current new landscape and paradigm that is so challenging. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will just say that anytime we approach a program or an initiative, we do say that enrollment is the entire institution and now is the entire system's responsibility. So when you talk about accountability, it's everyone's responsibility, in my opinion, my humble opinion. Thank you.
Is it Mary Beth and then Ron, or Ron and then Mary Beth? I don't remember what I said.
It was Mary Beth and then Ron.
Go ahead, Mary Beth. Thanks.
Hi. So I have two very quick things that I will just contribute. So the first one is regarding a program that you talked about in the beginning, which is the PACT program. And so one thing that I think is an issue, it contributes to the enrollment, is that for that program, students have to take 12 credits in order to qualify for that program. And for a lot of our community college students, that is not sustainable. So maybe they start because they think this is a great program, they can start, but oftentimes they have families, they work 2 jobs, they're taking care of parents, family members, and so they find that not sustainable, and so then they have to drop out. They have to, they can't continue on. So once they're in the program, it's free education for them, but if they can't sustain those 12 credits, then now they're out. So I think that's one big issue, is that it's a great program, it's a great start, but I think for the population of students that really need that program, 12 credits is a lot for them to be able to sustain. And then my second point that sort of goes along with that is, supporting students once they're on our campuses, is going to do a huge service to them. And so obviously, that's the faculty, that's also the support services that we have on our campuses. And I'll just, make one specific point to the school that I work at, which is the Untitled, but I know this is true for other places as well. We have no counselor of any sort on our campus. Nothing related to, any kind of mental health or any kind of, student issues, right? So if we have a student who's in crisis, we have to contact the dean, right? So the dean is the one who we go to the office of the dean if there's an issue or a student who is really in crisis. And with the students that we have now, with the population, with the mental health crisis in our country, these students have a lot going on. And I think that, is a service, that would be important for them to be able to keep them on campus so that they don't, have to just then leave because they're just in crisis. So, that's just another thing that I think is a big deal for our campus. And I know other places as well, that we just really want to make sure we have the supports that students need.
So I know we want to keep it moving, Kalina, but I can't help myself. So Mary Beth, I think your point about PACT is really good. It's a really good point, right? And what I would say is we're working with, this is a relatively new program too. I think this is like year 2 or 3, or it's very young. And then it makes me think about how does my office utilize this group to the best of your abilities and for the betterment of the system, right? And so somewhere along the lines, someone's thought 12 credits, great, awesome. And then there are folks like you saying, yeah, 12 credits is really hard. And then we're not bringing in as many people, and we're not bringing in as many people through PACT as possible. So what if PACT was scalable, right? What if the minimum was 6 credits, but you could scale it up to 12 credits, something like that? I would just, I'm throwing this out there. I would love to be able to take recommendations like that from the faculty, right? And then bring those forward in discussions with legislators and others. So maybe we can make adjustments. So nothing is, kind of carved into stone. I mean, these programs are meant to help students. We have to be fluid. So I would think about that. You all as a group, please think about maybe you can and should be making recommendations about those kinds of things. I know you do make recommendations now, but I do think we have to iron out some kind of operational fluidity, issues there. And then the other thing too is, if you don't have a mental health counselor on your campus, that's just scary to me. And so what I would say is that's got to be brought up with your CEO and the regional president, and then maybe something you all as a group who will have access to me at all times can keep me in the loop, keep my team in the loop. There is no reason that I'm sure there are some reasons that someone will float at me, but this is important. We have to help and protect the students at this point. So I'm with you there. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ron?
Thank you. I think one of the biggest problems in terms of the enrollment at our college, because our enrollment was going up and then sort of was flat for a while. It's now started to go down because we lost a really important president who left over what she saw as the centralization of authority and power in the system office. And she's now the president of All-Souls Community College, which is where she came from. And she brought in $16 million for them just this past year. So I think losing her was big. I think having decisions made at the local level is critical. I think our president came in and she saw an opportunity in Danbury, because while you're right, the demographics in Connecticut are dropping. That's an average. And there are places in Connecticut where that's not true. Danbury, the city of Danbury is growing exponentially. And so when she opened the Danbury campus, it alone saved our enrollment, because we still had drops in Waterbury, but Danbury was going sky high. And since she's left, that's sort of, we've lost that leadership, we've lost that vision. We had a 10-year strategic plan. I was in charge of measuring our progress on that strategic plan, and we were doing pretty good. I mean, we were increasing our graduation rates, we were increasing our retention, our completion rates, all that was happening. And then Students First came along. And Students First basically I actually got involved in it. Most of us were on committees for Students First, because we thought that what was working at our colleges could be scaled up and we could help the other colleges with our knowledge. But what we found when we served on these committees was that there was a small group in the system office who had already decided what they wanted us to do, and we're going to impose those solutions on us. Solutions such as the hiring of the guided pathways advisors. We at Untitled Valley, over 3,000 of our students has a 30-to-1 advisor to student ratio. All of our faculty advise at least 30 students. And so we have a 30-to-1 ratio for those students who are seeing faculty as their advisors. So the guided pathways is being sold as, well, this is going to be great because we're going to bring down the advisor to student ratio to 250-to-1. That's terrible for our students. Our students are already at a 30-to-1 and they're going to go up to a 250-to-1. It's horrible. And that money, that's COVID relief money that's being spent, okay, which will disappear in a couple of years. Another issue with the COVID relief money, the way it's being spent, is that we were cutting $100 to $350 checks the past couple of weeks for students, which is great. Students could use that money to buy books, right? The debt relief, I think, is also great. There's some really good things that we're doing with that money. However, we've also had people in admissions, the registrar's office, and counseling all get checks. And the reason they got checks is because the people in the system office that cut these checks thought they were students. And why did they think they were students? Because people in those positions, every once in a while, have to register as students to check out the banner system and make sure the technology is working appropriately for them. So they happen to take a frozen, what we think happened is that they took an audit of a freeze of that data, and those employees were in the list. And so now those employees got checks of somewhere between $100 and $350. They're not students. But this is what can happen when decisions are being made centrally rather than at the local level, where people know one another, where people know the students, where people know what's been done historically and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I think Students First has been a real problem in terms of the enrollment, at least maybe in some places it hasn't, but in Naugatuck Valley in particular, has been detrimental to the enrollment at our college.
Carmen, then Lewis. Oh, sorry. Do you want to respond quickly?
I just have a few quick points. I think the Naugatuck Valley and Danbury campus model is great, right? Multi-campus, serving tons of students, different exposures, different opportunities. I really, really appreciate that. It's something that I will say that, you know, again, I haven't locked it up yet, so I don't want to talk about it in too much detail, but I'm looking into how we can spur and encourage more development like that with our faculty to create programs that are dynamic, that are evolving, that are serving students, and that ultimately create a new value proposition or a stronger value proposition for the campuses and for the system as a whole, right? Because that's, you know, all boats rise in that case. So what I would say is, you know, please keep those kind of keep the pressure on creating in that venue in that way, and that's something that, you know, I will always have a significant interest and an ear for and an appetite for. You know, look, I'll say this. I think that it's clear to me. It was clear to me when I was interviewing for this job. It's clear to me now. We still got very, very big, you know, they're not even chasms, like the chasms that we need to cross if to try to kind of get over and through the merger and all that has happened and where we're going now. I will ask a couple questions, which you don't have to answer, you know, here per se. You could always follow up with me through Kalina or directly, however you feel more comfortable. If someone is imposing upon you that you're going to go from a 30-to-1 student to advisor ratio up to a 250-to-1 student to advisor ratio, if that is being imposed upon you, then that would be counterintuitive, to put it nicely, and I would be very keen to know that, right? And so that we could look into that more and address it. And then this thing with, you know, I had not heard this, that staff at some, what is, maybe it's only your institution, maybe it's other institutions, we're getting those checks. I would hope the staff would give the money back and let us know that if that's the case. Again, if this is a widespread problem and, you know, thousands of dollars.
They're trying to give it back. They so far have not gotten any answers on how to give it back.
Well, again, any intelligence you want to share with me on that, I made a note. I'm going to go back to our system finance and operations people and look into it. But look, you know, again, I think the dynamism of different types of programs that utilize our system physically and through its intellectual kind of prowess, I'd be more than happy to support those types of ventures. And I think, you know, if there is some kind of strange pressure you're getting to go from 30-to-1 up to 250-to-1, I know that those are the numbers, generally speaking. Some of the campuses are not at 30-to-1, right? So going to 250 is a godsend. And that is the, you know, that is the kind of benchmark nationally for advisor ratio. So anyway,
I guess my point, Terrence, is that if we could do 30-to-1 at Naugatuck Valley, that suggests, and we're a large institution, that suggests that may be possible at all schools without hiring guided pathways managers, which is costing a lot of money, and that money could go into other areas. We have a tutoring center, right, that employs a lot of students. Those students get paid minimum wage, so as the minimum wage goes up, right, that part of the budget goes up, And we have to reduce tutoring hours and things like that because we no longer can afford to have as many tutors. Because the budget needs to remain flat. So there are places where this money could be used that the local people at the local level really know, and yet it's being controlled centrally, and that makes it really difficult to address the needs that we have.
Fair enough. And I hear where you're coming from. I definitely see where you're coming from. I will say this though, and I do have to kind of, make sure I throw this out there if I feel this way. Whether it's Naugatuck or any of our institutions, enrollment's been going down for 10 years. It really has. Like, look at the trends. Those numbers are real, right? Like, so even before Students First, the numbers were going down. The enrollment was going down. And so, yeah, I think what has happened with the merger has certainly, made things more challenging in some ways. But I would just be kind of, I would think about it in a bit more of a kind of nuanced manner. Like, I don't think that can, and I don't think you said this, but I just would be careful of saying like, well, the merger is like the main reason or a big part of the reason why. I think there are a lot of reasons why it's been going down. So, and I can't say if the merger did or did not have an impact there in that significant manner. So, okay, back to Kalina, the point guard. Go ahead.
So before we get to Carmen and then Lois, just two things, right? Clearly, we need to have a much more in-depth conversation about this issue, though we need to get clear on what the issue is, right? Because I think my initial comment had been that we are so hyper-focused on enrollment, and when the issue lies elsewhere, outside of the system, the conditions under which we are recruiting students, right? And as long as this conversation about enrollment is about, we provide a great benefit. We should always be inviting people in and cultivating that enrollment. But at the same time, an enrollment conversation that is, in fact, also a conversation about financial viability is an interesting conversation, right? It's a convoluted conversation. So I think that we have to schedule some time to have this conversation much more in depth with the requisite facts in front of us, like you said. And we will absolutely do that. I also want to ask if the committee is willing, and if you are able, Terrence, will you be able to stick with us for a little bit longer? So that
I don't have another one. I don't think I have another one till like 3 o'clock. So I'm good to go with you all till. Oh wait, I'm sorry. What's this? 2:30. So I've got 17 minutes. But I'm happy to stay with you for that. And I would simply say as well, yes, enrollment and retention, and then, a bunch of factors. And again, I would say, I don't think there's no such thing as academic planning versus enrollment planning versus financial planning versus facilities and operations planning. All planning is planning. We cannot disaggregate one from the other. Everything affects everything, right? So if I'm going to talk about enrollment, I got to talk about academics, and then I got to talk about the facilities that support the academics, and I got to talk about all those different things. So I'm just adding my 2 cents there. And again, I would be happy to be a part of that at the appropriate time. And our office would also be happy to provide certain levels of kind of broad and more internecine data, since that's our job, is to have that kind of thing. So
thank you. And I did think that you had the flexibility till 3 o'clock. So since it's just till 2:30, I'm going to ask that we just kind of do it this popcorn style, right? So Carmen, then Lois, then anyone else. Let's get through the list of things so that you see the breadth of the issues. And we'll cut that off at, let's say, 2:25, give or take.
And if it's okay, I'll probably keep my mouth shut more then.
Right, you're right. So yes, no back, let's do the back and forth where you can respond to sort of what you see as necessary to be responded to in that sort of array of issues. Does that make sense? All right, great. Go ahead, Carmen and Lois, and then Jen.
All right, so I'll try to keep this kind of succinct, but I'm just curious, at some point in time, faculty are very concerned about the system office as far as their plan to eliminate money for promotion, sabbatical, and professional development, or at least have it at the discretion of the systems office. And, we're really concerned about, that this does not seem to improve the quality of our system. We're really concerned about the proposed removal to remove department chairs from the community colleges. And as a former faculty member, would you agree with this? And I feel like it devalues the faculty in the community college system. Would this be something would be done at the four-year schools? And then finally, the CEOs at the individual colleges, all members of the community college see our CEOs as being completely disempowered. They can't make hiring decisions. They can't approve telework. Some can't even approve vacation time. And, and I just, want to know at some point in time, just for you to think about this, and are you aware that this is hurting our colleges? And again, at some point in time, these things I mentioned about the professional development, promotion sabbaticals, the department chair position proposals, and the CEOs, what are your thoughts on this, and would you support this? That's all I have.
Go ahead, Lois.
Okay, I thought he was going to answer that. I'm going to bring this back to COVID because I think this is an immediate issue. And what has been put forward is emblematic of how the System Office and Board of Regents has been operating in other areas. The route you've chosen to take with the community colleges to deal with the ever-growing COVID crisis will, in the long run, lead to the closure of many, if not all, of the colleges. We are not allowed to request proof of vaccination. All requests for exemptions must be approved. The social distancing guidelines have been abandoned. While mask wearing is mandated, there is no real way to actually enforce this. You continue to paint a rather rosy picture of the future when we all know that until we get many more people vaccinated, this will continue to be a serious problem with the real possibility that a more virulent and dangerous mutant will occur. The colleges in particular will be petri dishes where this might happen because of the very limited precautions that are being implemented. What was the motivation for coming up with this minimal policy and not allowing the colleges to form policies that would meet the needs of their specific college?
Lois. Jen.
So I, for the sake of time, was just typing a quick statement that I think would be easier if I just read quickly. Mine relates to the ACME policy and the great extent to which I hope that we could have a conversation teacher to teacher about what happens in the classroom at some point. We've had many representatives come to these meetings and I've made the same pitch each time. Dr. Gates was the only person who took me up on it, and I met with her for an hour and I showed her the actual courses, and she was truly blown away by the innovations that faculty have come up with in the last decade that I recounted for her. So I'll just read my brief statement, please. The ACME policy is problematic for several reasons. Guided pathways calls for the elimination of developmental education, which will have dire consequences for our underprepared students, many of whom come to the college with skills well below high school level math and English. One goal of guided pathways is to do intrusive advising and to put students in as many credits as possible, at the same time putting underprepared learners in college level courses. The BOR has presented charts of how they will balance their budget through PACT and guided pathways, but I could provide you with specific examples as to why their projections are quite unrealistic based on what I have seen in countless examples with actual students who are advised into 12 to 15 credits that they can't handle. To your point about faculty making recommendations, I can tell you that I have served on statewide committee after committee where folks in charge already decided what they were going to do and were not interested in faculty feedback. So they would take our comments and not make any changes over and over. For example, I went to the ACME rollout conference where we filled easels all around the room in a one-day brainstorming session, only to return the next day to find the work was ignored and a projection was on the screen of the plan the managers intended all along. The answer is not taking underprepared and disenfranchised learners and telling them to learn faster. At some point, it is my hope that the folks in charge will take some time to truly talk with the teachers. I'm happy to meet to show you my masterclass I made for developmental English if you're interested in seeing what we lost when these programs are dismantled. Thank you.
Others?
Yeah.
If there are no other, did you get to the list through most of the lists, Kalina?
I'm gonna mention at least two other things, and I'll just mention, right? One was and I guess this is relevant to enrollment also, the fact that the CSCC catalog requires a first-year experience course from all students, regardless of their previous education, degrees, experience, etc. There are some programs for which those directing the programs think it'll be a death knell, and that it's just not useful for their students. So that was one area of concern. Another was about the governance structure, and this is a big one. This is one that we spent a lot of time on. That curriculum and all of the policies going into this new structure are being built without a shared governance process for that college, right? Because we are in an interesting situation where the policies and curriculum will pre-exist the college itself. So I don't know if this has ever really happened in this way before, but there is no Senate or curriculum committee for that entire college curriculum. And I believe that, you know, should that college come into existence, or when it does, it will be what, the 5th largest in the country. So it's very consequential that we're doing things in that way. I'll add one because there was a mention of, you know, how we can make this process more productive, right, as an advisory committee. And I don't know if you want to speak to this, David, because you spoke. I know you kind of had this on your to-do list, but as a committee of the board, we do not have any process by which we report to the board other than twice yearly reports when there is no back and forth. We speak, and then we move on to the next agenda item, and that, you know, covers 6 months worth of issues that none of which can be dealt with in depth. Statutes also call for joint meetings of the board and the FAC twice a year. Those have not been observed in many years, and even though the students and the faculty have been pursuing them pretty energetically for the past 2 years, there's still not one scheduled. So, you know, two of the things I know that David has been talking about for quite a while, and we all have been talking about, is it is an odd structure that a committee of the board does not report to the board, does not have a standing item each month where we report back from time to time, and also that those meetings between both the student advisory committee and the faculty advisory committee that should be scheduled twice yearly, and I believe the agenda is agreed upon, you know, between the chair of the FAC and the chair of the board. Those need to happen so that these sorts of conversations, like, you know, this isn't all built up for one big, right, issue fest in the way that we're kind of just throwing stuff out there today. Is there anybody else who wants to get a couple of things just in the air before we kind of close out and have Terrence respond? And remember that, sorry, I should have mentioned this before. Go ahead, Bill. This is always an open meeting and everyone is always invited to participate fully with the exception of voting. So guests, please, wide open. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. I've just been listening basically. I don't plan to say anything, but Terrence, I think you are looking for really honest thoughts about what could make things better. And I heard you use some very important words like together and trust. And I think we recognize that college and university campuses are supposed to be hotbeds of ideas, of thinking, right? Of solving problems. And we know that people on our campuses have skills for leadership because faculty members like yourself rise to positions of leadership. And that's a wonderful thing because you bring with you the experience that you had perhaps in a different role. But I think the thing that maybe goes unsaid that needs to be said for purposes, for very constructive purposes, goes back to what you were talking about when you talked about a marriage where two partners have very different perceptions of what the problem is. And I think what's happened is that there is a terribly dysfunctional relationship between the board, system office, and the faculty, and that doesn't need to be. I think you used the words, I'm not quoting you, but I think you talked about a partnership, because market share is not a set proportion, right? So even though there's been a trend, a downward trend in enrollment within our system, and we see demographics changing within the state, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to grab a larger market share. And if the faculty are allowed to bring forward ideas that are tested in the classroom, in counseling and advisement with our students, in all of the rescue efforts that you know about because you've done it. You've been a faculty member and you've done this. This is what makes the difference. Unfortunately, the relationship between the board, system office, and the faculty has really become a problem. And I think a great challenge for a leader of the system is to heal that, to find a cure or maybe a vaccine. I think a cure is better, right? So if you just look at some of the examples, we have a student advisory committee to the BOR. The student member on the board has a vote on the board. We have a faculty advisory committee. The faculty representative does not have a vote on the Board of Regents. It sends a message. And there are so many things that send very clear messages to us that make us feel that we are not valued. When you have a faculty that is valued, it's energized. And when a faculty is energized, the students feel it. And when the students feel that, they will be wearing the sandwich signs that say, go to this college, go to this university. And there's no reason if we have a new paradigm of how we work together, very respectfully in both directions, that we can't overcome, I think, an image of our system that has declined, even though our programs remain very, very strong. And we have some programs in our system that were first in the state, many very unique programs, very strong programs with graduates who have bright futures. So this is not a time to be Northwestern Mutual Life, the quiet company, right? We need to really promote what we do. But before we can do that in a genuine way, we need to be together. And I think that's not an easy problem to fix, but I think it is the most important problem to fix because the COVID pandemic is going to go into a different form. It may become an endemic disease that we live with. We may overcome it. But our relationship within the system is an ongoing thing that will determine how effective we can be. Thank you.
So in the 90 seconds before I get, and it's a media thing, so I try to be on time for these things, but I couldn't agree with you more, Bill. And again, I hope that my candor is a signal of the kind of relationship I want to have with the faculty and with all folks in the system, right? And so that's number one. But I agree with you that we have to bridge the serious levels of distrust and the rancor that exists right now, and that's it is if it's not at the top of my list, it's like if it's not number one, it's 1A. Okay, so that's for sure. A few things I'll say real quick, because we just don't have the time. Lois, you said some stuff about what we're doing with COVID. Look, I'm not going to tell you what you think or what you feel is right or wrong. I will tell you that we're doing the best that we can, that we care about the safety and well-being of our campuses, and that's priority. And like I said at the beginning, it's imperfect, but we're going to continue to just do what we can to the best of our abilities to try to make sure that folks are safe, right? So you can believe me or you cannot believe me. I'm not going to be able to control that, but I'll tell you that right now. I think there are some things, Carmen, you asked that were about the union negotiations, it sounds like. I can't comment on that in a public meeting, the negotiations that are taking place, and we're gonna see how that goes. Jen, you talked about ACME. I think ACME is obviously a very kind of multi-layered, multi-pronged thing, but to me, it sounds like there's a real argument to be made about prereq versus co-req is kind of how I break it down. I'd be happy to talk about that. I think we got to have ways to talk about that before, but I will also say this, a lot of decision making is based on outcomes. And if data is showing that our outcomes for students is not where we want it or need it to be, and action needs to be made or it needs to take place, then, this is where we missed each other somewhere, right? Over 10 years of time. Right. So, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about system office and the campuses and the faculty. So that too, I think has to be looked at. So, let me just stop there and say that, I do value this group. I want to work collegially, professionally, consistently together. Again, I hope to ride off into the sunset someday and retire as an administrator and go back to teaching creative writing and reading my students grammatically questionable stories at times, and that's okay, because that's our job, is to help them with that. But I'll come to this meeting as often as I can when I'm invited, and I want to try to find other ways that we can continue to communicate and coordinate and just keep working together. I truly mean it. I want to have a partnership, and I'm going to have any kind of relationship that you all want to have with me as the system president and with my team and the system office. So I'm here for it. Okay. So Kalina, I'm sorry, I could talk to you all for 3 hours. We don't have 3 hours, and I don't think that would be healthy anyway. So I'm going to bounce. I got to do this interview, and we're going to do this again. All right.
Thank you for the time you gave us, and I'll follow up.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Kalina. Take care. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye. And Carmen, I think he responded somewhat to your comments, but department chairs are not a matter of union negotiations. Is that correct? That's a matter of the structure of the new college.
And same thing with the CEOs, isn't it? Or is that part of the union negotiation?
Right.
That's not union. That's part of the structure.
Yeah. So
Actually,
anyway,
CEOs are not part of the union. It's just changing the names in the contracts from president to CEO. That's all.
No, but I'm just talking about as far as disempowerment of the CEOs. What are his thoughts on that? That's not something we're negotiating. And unfortunately, I just feel like but he is in charge of the whole system. So can he have a role in the negotiating team and saying, hey guys, you know what, maybe it'd be a good idea to give them promotion sabbaticals and let it be at the discretion of the college. I mean, so anyway, we at least put it out there. He is the top dog here, right?
Yeah. So we'll follow up and try to get some responses or some new forum or time to get a little bit more on this. I apologize somewhat for letting us get out of the agreed upon format, and yet at the same time, I think we see how conversations go. This was our first introduction to each other, and just the way that it unfolds is part of getting to know each other. And clearly, the agreed upon format was not the one that works best for him, and so we're going to just structure things differently in the future and try to be a little bit more productive with it. Go ahead, Jen.
I feel like we have these different guests and stuff, and people respond in different ways, but I feel like at times when I've met with David Levinson, he seems to be really sensitive to how faculty are feeling, about how people are treated. So I'm just wondering, would there be any benefit to the next time we invite Terrence to also invite David Levinson to maybe make that point a bit more? Because I hear a lot of, I know there's a problem, we're going to address it, but I never hear that this is how we're addressing it. And if this group can help facilitate those discussions, it might be beneficial if that's something we want to take on. But it seems to me that I hear a lot of times people say things like, they'll close with, well, I want to be professional and collegial and whatever. And it's sort of like they almost feel like they came in under the assumption that we weren't going to be. And I think that we're grand. So I'm confused by that notion. And I just think that I just think we're right.
You're right. I agree with you. I felt like there was another hand or something. Oh, Myrna. Myrna? Had a hand?
I have to unmute myself. I'm muting.
Gotcha.
Sorry. I agree with Jen, but didn't we have David come to one of our meetings and there was very little follow-up with a lot of the concerns that we had, where he probably is very sensitive. I do recall the meeting we had where we really challenged him, and so where did all of the questions and concerns go? We haven't heard from him since. He did respond. I take that back. I think he did respond, but really didn't. Responded, but didn't really respond. Is that correct in my review of?
Yeah, I mean, I had a follow-up meeting with him on the English side for something, and I feel like he was trying to convey to others that this is an ongoing pressing issue. And I think that I've heard in other conversations that I've had that he feels a little bit like maybe his hands are tied with some of these things also. So maybe the more we can get people together to kind of see how they, second what we're saying to one another, it might help facilitate more of a sense of goodwill.
Yeah. And yeah, and my recollection also, Myrna, was that there were certain sort of commitments made, and about changes in the way that processes would work in the governance structure, etc. And they were pretty plainly stated commitments, and nothing has in fact changed. So while the conversation about, I do believe that he has these sentiments, right, about understanding and feeling what we're feeling, but there is still no process by which any of the things that we can talk to him about can be resolved. And I think until he puts them in place, my difficulty has always been trying to understand our relationship to him currently. So when we talk about ACME, absolutely, when we talk about developmental ed and so on, he's doing that, and that's the direction in which we're going. And yet at the moment, I don't know, but let's talk more about how we can structure the next conversation about how things are going to go. Anyone else want to just chat a little bit before we move on to the next bit?
I just want to just mention that honestly, listening to him talk, maybe it's just being optimistic, but I do feel somewhat encouraged that he does seem to actually, he seems to care. He seems to he wants to get this right. He seems to want to work with the faculty. So we'll see. I'll be cautiously optimistic and not too jaded one more time again. And but anyway, it was encouraging to me.
This is Barbara. Can I say something?
Sure. And then Seth, and then Lois.
Okay, thanks. I'm sitting here thinking much of why we can't address process questions has to do with the fact that they will not share their organizational chart with anyone, not even deans, not even probably, I don't know. I think probably David Levinson in that chart has no power, I would guess, but we don't know the answer to that. We don't know who the people that are giving us problems with all these committees and on stuff, who do they work for? Who do they report to? We don't even know the answer to anything about what is their process. I was sorry that we didn't raise the question of a statewide faculty senate immediately, because then that would fit into a chart somewhere. There would be an agreement about how that operated, but there is no agreement about how we can have input. Anyway, that's my thought. So I thought maybe one thing we should do is ask him for one and explain that this is one of the big obstacles to faculty relationships with system office is it's all a secret.
and the ongoing saga of requesting the org chart. That's what, is this about 3 years? Or
Yeah,
is it-
but he's a new guy.
Yes, no, I agree completely. Let's do it. Go ahead, Seth.
Thank you, Clint. Well, I just want to, I'll start by saying I think the conversation was really interesting. And I want to just commend everybody on the FAC for your attention and, commitment to having the dialogue. I found some of the things that President Chang said, really interesting. He does acknowledge the chasm, right, between, as he said it, between the faculty and the system administration. I think he sidestepped some of the questions clearly that we asked at the end regarding, the removal of department chairs in the community college system and how the CEOs are disempowered. I think we really need to get some honest, since he believes in candor, some honest feedback regarding those things. So those are both really problematic as we move to the new structure. And I was also interested to hear that he looks to return to being a faculty member, at some point. I think he had the opportunity now as the system leader to not basically gut the contracts for faculty and staff. So I don't see how someone that wants to return to being faculty one day would contribute to basically gutting the contracts for faculty in the community colleges and the state universities, and how we think he'd get a welcome home after he participates in that process. So I think there's a disconnect here, and I think at some point we want to provide Dr. Chang more opportunity to to really have this dialogue about what it means to disempower faculty and staff, and what it means to contribute to the, as we call it, deprofessionalization of our system, yet somehow be some kind of champion. So I think we don't want to just, flesh that out more. But I think this is a good start for a dialogue. And I think I really commend the FAC for having this space, for that dialogue.
Thanks, Lois?
I'm going to show my deep and continued cynicism. Number one, the statement question I asked about the COVID thing, he was very disingenuous in his response. Very disingenuous. Number two, I really don't think he cares very much. He's already shown himself as a puppet to the system office and the Board of Regents. And number three, I'm going to ask, who is call-in user 4?
They left before I could ask.
Oh, the call-in user 4 left?
That was Lois, that was me because my internet connection keeps going on and off.
Oh,
And
got
in
it.
order
Okay.
to hear what was happening, I called in, then my internet connection came back. So
Got it.
I
Okay.
disconnected.
All right. Then I'll go back to my cynicism and my deep cynicism. Yeah, I think he sidestepped a lot of things. Everything was focused on enrollment. Everything was focused on enrollment. It's like, we're going to fix everything with this consolidation. Consolidation is going to fix enrollment. And that's our big problem anyway. So every time we turn around, we have a different problem we're fixing with consolidation. So I was not impressed. I'm sorry. I'll stop there.
Hope we impressed him. Ron, I saw your hand go up and then down. Is it
No,
there?
that was an accident. Sorry.
Okay, so Melanie
I
has
just
a
wanted,
hand.
yeah, I just wanted to say I second absolutely everything Lois just said. Absolutely everything. Yeah. Right on, Lois.
Thank you. Fran's hand is up.
Where? Oh,
Fran.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been quiet, listening more than talking, obviously. And a lot of the points I wanted to make, other people made, and they made them better than I would have made anyway. Yeah, and maybe it's just my age and the point at which I am in my career, but yeah, I'm giving up hope here. I really am. The one thing he didn't want to talk about pretty clearly, he gets testy, is the consolidation. He really doesn't want to talk about that. That's a fait accompli. And, if that isn't addressed, this is going to continue. And I just don't see how he is going to address that, or to what extent he'd be willing to. all the problems we're facing flow from that. All of them is students first. And clearly he's not going to fight that battle. He's not going to do it. So the rest is tinkering around the edges. We might get some little concession here or there, but I just don't see any change. I just don't see it happen. Sorry.
Armin, I think you're unmuted. Are you going to say something? Okay. I have to say that I fully appreciate how an outside understanding of what's happening in the system, especially around consolidation, it has been marketed so well that it is very easy to understand it as a solution, a legitimate solution to any number of things, if you are outside of the system and if you are not particularly familiar with our students also. And I think also that consolidation is very, very tempting because it reframes our issues as much easier than they are and then throws a solution at them. The fix to the destruction that I think we are, this destructive path that we're heading down will be long, but at least it's a ways off. And the more that we ask to change path, the closer we ask for that huge mess of rebuilding to start, and nobody wants to deal with it, right? So I feel like they're just human reasons and reasons of perspective and any other number of reasons that anyone who has not been here with us for the past few years and even longer is not going to start from a place that's even remotely close to where we are. And no matter what we think, we're a friggin' amazing resource. Like when people are introducing themselves and talking about how many years we've been in the system, and it's just amazing, right? And some of us have spent way too much time paying attention to this and immersing ourselves in it. So I hope that we can reflect on this and figure out how we can be that resource in some way that is or at least attempt it. Because I like that we have a cynical side, but we also have a sort of function by statute to attempt to continue to provide this, and if not effectively, to document what has happened in our state, so that we understand what has happened and we can clean it up, that other states don't go down the same kind of path, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I'm being, everybody knows where I stand on consolidation, so I'm being fairly straightforward about that. Yeah, Mike.
I just wanted to ask you, Kalina, in your email, you mentioned that the atmosphere wasn't, given recent events, the atmosphere for conversation might be difficult, and so you proposed that plan, which I liked. I was just curious, is there something I mean, I know atmosphere is bad, but is there something in particular, events over the summer or conversations that you'd have been involved in recently that suggested that you were referring to, or that you could tell us about?
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about return to campus, but I think it's mostly that, right? It's imminent. It's in a few days. And for many of us, I know that the universities have it a little bit harder than the colleges, but even still at the colleges, we had meetings yesterday, both union and faculty staff council, to try to get clear. We realized that different departments were doing different things, different people had different understandings, to get clear on what was happening and how to understand the semester and what the safety protocols were and how they were going to be enforced, and discovered that no such thing was possible. So instead, we developed a list that I think I shared with you all. At Norwalk, they've also done that. I have a feeling that universities are clearer on what the protocols are than some of our colleges, but maybe not satisfied with them. So I think, most of us, and it's at a deep level, right? It's at that gut survival level. People are literally, some of us, afraid and afraid for our families. So that was kind of the feeling that I got. I mean, I never felt so sort of bogged down talking with colleagues who are usually otherwise, able to rise above whatever we're dealing with. So that was mostly what I was talking about.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Should we move on? It's reports of the chair and vice chair next. And okay, so we're moving on, but I will reveal that I have very little to say. CCIC was scheduled to meet 2 days ago, but it was canceled. And I think this speaks again to what you were talking about, Barbara. To what extent does the authority for the Consolidated College actually lie with David Levinson? David Levinson chairs the CCIC. When we asked before about the governance procedures, I think, and I asked specifically, weren't you at the head of CCIC when this was going on? He said something to the effect of being asleep at the wheel. Right now, we are building this enormous college that is supposed to open in just about 2 years, and CCIC was canceled. So I doubt very much that nothing much is going on. No CCIC. And I mean, that felt very critical. I apologize. Fact is, no CCIC. And I don't believe there have been, with the exception of the executive committee meeting of the BOR yesterday that I did not miss. I mean, I did not attend and I was not able to review before today. I don't know, David, are you with us? He's got the Wi-Fi issues. I'm not sure if David.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a meeting with the president of the university on COVID-19 measures, and that occupied the day.
Okay, yeah. So
I'm not sure exactly what they did or they didn't do, but I guess we'll talk more about the COVID in just a minute.
Yes. So
Alina.
I will. Yeah.
Yes, the executive committee of the board met yesterday.
Thanks.
And it was a relatively quick meeting. We had, Terrence had comments. We had 2 resolutions of an acceptance of a gift for Gateway Community College for the Automotive Technology Program, and a program name correction for OHE that needed to get processed before the beginning of the fall semester. We got a COVID update, and that is it. So
Thanks
it was
so
relatively brief and straightforward. That's what I got.
Thank you.
And that is the first meeting we've had since June, since the end of June. So the board does take the summer off.
Right. Right. So we've
but
had
COVID-19 didn't.
COVID-19 did not.
Did not. It did not. So we've had no board meetings, so we have nothing to report on that, or I have nothing to report on that. I will just say that we've had conversations about, I guess you can talk about the other conversations, David, but David and I have had conversations about the need to provide some sort of update to the board, because we had decided to forego our twice yearly report to the board in June, because we believed that we would any minute now be having a joint meeting of the FAC and BOR. And that kind of fell apart last month after we were asked to hold on just a little bit. So we're going to have to think about how to replace that so that there is sufficient information coming from us. We are continuing to push for that joint meeting and discussing with people who can help us push for that joint meeting. So yeah. And David, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I concur with you. I think the main thing that we need to be preparing is a presentation to the board, our so-called semi-annual presentation. And I think, the issues that I want to bring up, I'll mention them just briefly. I have a couple of slogans, in fact, 3 of them. One is review and revise. We're talking about this for some time, and that's the question of reviewing and revising students first. And we need to set out clearly what are the principles upon which we think any revision should be made, namely the autonomy and integrity of the constituent institutions, faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy, and shared services based on bilateral and multilateral agreements, not decreed from on high. I think we have to go further than that and say it's not just a question of resetting the relationship, which I think is to some extent the term I would use to describe Terence Cheng's approach. I mean, I think he's genuine about wanting to reset things as best can be done. But we really have to go further than that. We need to repair and rebuild. There's a lot of damage that's been done. Right? And that's not just a minor matter, even of doing the three things that we want to do, namely the joint meeting of the FAC and the BOR, a monthly report from the FAC, and another matter which I've brought up with Terence Cheng, namely that there has to be some follow-up to the public commentaries. People get up there and speak and make extremely good points, and there is dead silence afterwards. No follow-up, whatever. Sometimes you can't follow up. Sometimes it's just a complaint. Sometimes it's just a congratulation. But there are matters that do need to be followed up. And part of the disconnect between faculty and the board lies in that lack of follow-up to issues that are brought up, I think often in a very eloquent way by faculty at the public comment section. So I think finally we need to preserve and promote. There are some things that need to be preserved, and that is the shared governance, which the community college faculty and the university faculty have worked so hard over the years to develop. And we have to promote public higher education in the state. I think we're agreed that recruitment, retention, and graduation of students, that equity for minority students and overcoming the achievement gap, all of those things have to be done. But we also need to look at the question of dealing with the bureaucratic bloat, which has been a consequence of Students First. It's not surprising that it's hard to keep track of what David Levinson is doing. I mean, how many people is he in charge of? How does shared services in the community college, to whom do they report? To regional presidents, to the unaccredited one community college, to the CSCU president? I mean, all of those are questions which are up in the air. And so I think that we need to directly address, and I saw a really good slogan. So I'm into slogans lately because I think that, 20-page documents, that's not going to work. The 2-page abstract, no, that's not going to work either. The 2-paragraph abstract to the 2-page summary of the 20-page document, which George Bush ticked off the yes, go to war in Iraq on, even that's probably too much. So I'm down to slogans. I'm sort of sorry to admit that I've finally sunk to that level. But in any case, I think that we have to, the sign that I saw, and maybe it was in Chicago at one of the faculty actions that were undertaken there, you can't put students first if you put faculty last. And we have to directly address the question that a lot of people at the system office have concluded, it's a Ronald Reagan moment for them, faculty are not the solution, faculty are the problem. And so long as we do not overcome that point of view, there's going to be a struggle for control and for power. Who determines what goes on at the community colleges and ultimately at the universities? Because I think we're next on the chopping block. And that question is, who's in charge of curriculum and pedagogy? That should be us. Who's in charge of budget? That's going to be them. We need to come and have a clear demarcation of who gets what under shared governance. And so those are some of the issues that I want to bring up when we do the semi-annual report. The other one, of course, is the COVID. And I don't know, that's a separate item, Kalina? So
Yes.
I'll
Yes,
save
absolutely.
my comments until we get there.
Okay. Love you in your alliterative phase, Blitz. Ron, did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, David, I think one of the things too, and this is related to funding for the schools as well, is that we need leadership, and hopefully Terence understands that we need leadership that is going to promote, and I think you used the word promote our institutions as strong and viable places where students can get a really good education for really low cost. the way in which Students First and consolidation, the mergers have been sold to the public and to everyone who will listen, to politicians and so on, is that the colleges are all failing. We're all terrible. Okay, we all are, we're failing. We're failed institutions, so therefore we need a consolidation. Well, if I'm a legislator, or if I'm the governor, why would I want to give failing institutions more money? That's not the job of a president. The job of a president is to be public relations. They're supposed to be talking about how wonderful we are and what a great place it is for people to go and get an education. I think that's one of the things that's been at the core of why we've had trouble in terms of enrollment. If he really wants to know, it's because his predecessors, okay, spent all this time going around bad-mouthing us. And that really, he needs to put an end to that. And he can put an end to that. He needs to stop talking about what bad places we are, and start talking about how effective and strong we are.
Thanks, Ron. And speaking of that change in narrative, right? That was done by purposefully applying an inappropriate measure that for many decades we knew that we should never use to measure the success of the community colleges, and work was done to develop better measures. And then here we are, right? Here we are applying it to ourselves. So really destructive, but let's see. I know Lois is in the chat. Jump in if you want to. I'll just finish up with my report. Like I said, there's very little to report. And we did have one development that I think requires a lot of our time, but because, today there would need to be a lot of discussion about, or I assumed there might be a lot of discussion about returning to campus. And then we had President Chang. So our next meeting is actually really soon. It's September 10th. And both the NECHI update, the board's NECHI update, and the Lois created a public comment in response to it. And I think there have been other responses across the system. That's something I know we're going to want to talk about at some point. So we can talk about that on September 10th. And that is actually still before the next meeting of the full board. So David and I might have a draft of something that we want to present then to you if we decide that, September's doable. Okay, so let's move on then to campus return. And Ron, is your hand still up or again? Okay. So I'm going to just, I don't have a structure for this. It is so varied across the system. I know many of us received a memo from Terrence, President Chang, yesterday, right? One for the universities, one for the colleges. So that has informed us to some extent, though there are a lot of remaining questions that are either just inconsistencies or need to be clarified. At Gateway, where I think there was a mention of proof of vaccination. But the last we spoke of was attestation. So if there is a method by which we are collecting proof of vaccination, we don't know what it is yet. So maybe that's something that we need to find out. But I'll just put it out there. I think we might have more questions than answers, but let's just share what we're doing and figure out whether there's anything we need to do about it. Go ahead, Lois.
My understanding is that community colleges have no processes in place to show proof of vaccination at all. That's not going to happen. The universities, 3 of the universities are using Medicat, and one Eastern is using an email that they've set up that students submit their proof of vaccination. And the other 3 have students submit through Medicat. We have nothing. And from every discussion that I've had, because of the question list that I made up, and I've gotten responses and I've had conversations with the administration, there is no process set up for us to determine who has and has not been vaccinated.
So does anybody at a community college, is anyone aware of a process where we are collecting proof of vaccination? Okay. Is everyone, does anyone have a sense of the extent to which we've collected attestations?
I've heard at Norwalk, and this was probably a week and a half or so ago, that there were, the attestations. No, what I'm gonna say is that there were something like 40 or 50 students who had asked for exemptions.
Okay. And your student body is how large?
I don't, well, at this point in time, I don't know what the numbers are.
Okay.
It's a couple of thousand. But
And I think,
you know, I don't, you know, I honestly don't know where all this stands. I know that since that letter from Cheng came out yesterday, that now they're our, at least community on Norwalk is putting together a response and asking some questions, because that letter does not answer a lot of questions. Just makes a lot of statements. And for example, the community colleges are now, along with the state university, supposedly they've hired some outside firm to do testing for the community colleges. So supposedly students who are unvaccinated will be tested on a weekly basis. The only issue is that we have no idea who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been vaccinated. So how do we go about testing these students? But they've hired a company to do this.
well, I mean, that's progress. Before we were told, you know, before the story was that we wouldn't have any testing at community colleges at all. So at least the attempt is great. I don't know how they'll actually implement.
Well, I don't know if I would call it great, because we have no mechanism to determine who is or is not vaccinated. So we have no mechanism to determine who should be tested. And
the testing would reveal that information. I mean, the selection would reveal, even if we weren't in on doing the selection, it would reveal what is regarded as private information. Can I just say also, Lois, about the exemption request rate, because we haven't tied proof or attestation, even of vaccination, to any kind of registration restriction. What's more meaningful, I think, than the number of exemptions requested or even approved is the response rate, because our sample is really small. And yeah, our sample is really small. We haven't heard from a lot of students, or at least if we have, we don't know yet. I think we might have numbers from Central. I'm not sure that we have numbers from anywhere else. And we've been requesting numbers across the system, but haven't received any.
Yeah, Fred, I think, has numbers from Central, or I have them. I mean, it was given at the meeting yesterday. Now, I've been asking for these numbers for 3 weeks, both at the system office and at my university. And the response has always been either I'd have to refer to the president, that the vice president for student affairs is not willing to give it to me. And the same thing from Angelo Simoni. He said, oh, well, President Cheng will tell you about that when he meets with you. But we really didn't get to have that discussion, and I think I will follow up and make that request. But the numbers that we got yesterday from Central, which does have the Medicat system, and which has a competent administrator, our chief operations officer, looking into this. Just 1 second. Was that the response rate was 47%, of which 81% had been vaccinated. Right, that's on about 2,400 students, right? And that makes about 400 students who have applied and received exemptions, of which only a handful were medical exemptions. CCSU is kind of unique. For some reason, with which I disagree, they decided not to collect the reasons because they thought the reasons were so ridiculous, they didn't want to be in a position to have to agree to them. Because the guidance that they got from the system office, which is the guidance that the system office understands that they got from the Attorney General's office, is that all exemptions have to be approved, or that at any rate, the system office was unwilling or unable to provide criteria, which was interpreted, I think, further down the line as saying, then all of them have to be accepted. So that the number of medical exemptions was really small, somewhere around 1%, perhaps even less. Response rate was higher in the residences at 67%, of which 92% were vaccinated. There is a procedure, and there's supposed to be a phone number circulated that you call if a student, for example, shows up in class and refuses to be masked. There's also the mask mandate that's in force. Although they were somewhat vague yesterday as to what were the further steps in discipline if a student continues to refuse to do so. And I've certainly proposed to them that a student who has been warned once, either that they have not respected the mask mandate, or secondly, that they have not responded as to their vaccination status, should be warned once, and if that still continues, the second week, be suspended. But I'm not sure that that's what they plan to do. I think they had a 3 or 4 step procedure, which probably could go on for close to a month. So that's basically the information that I have. The other issue, which I think is one which is important to us, besides this whole non-medical vaccination question, is also this insistence in the email that we got. In fact, it was from President Cheng, that no change of mode of delivery of classes would be permitted. Right? And I think that there is some misunderstanding here, but we've sort of gone from, well, we're all going to be 90% online to, at least at the universities, well, we're all going to be 90% on ground. And there is issues I brought up, where, for example, how do you do group work in a classroom where you can't move the chairs, right? Where they're all sort of fixed in place with 3-foot distances. Secondly, how do you do office hours? Can't you do those office hours online? And I can tell you, and I thought it was ridiculous, and I think I probably said so in the chat room, what we were told by our interim provost, former faculty member from no more than 2 years ago, is that, oh, sure, you can use Blackboard Consolidate to do group work, but you have to do it in the classroom. You have to be there present in the classroom. And secondly, yeah, sure, you can do your office hours online as long as you're sitting in your office. And so that kind of mechanistic interpretation, I'm sorry we didn't have further time to discuss this with Terence Chang, but I mean, I think the time was profitably used, and it was going to be the way that it was. We couldn't really deal with 2 different issues. But I think there's lots of issues that are still here at the level of the vaccination mandate, the masking mandate, and also how we combine on ground and online. That still have to be looked at.
And just, David, to just make sure that I've heard you correctly. So if for the entire student body at Central, we have information about the vaccination status of fewer than 50% of the students.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, I just want to highlight that the CDC guidance for higher ed, I think it was last updated July 23rd, recommends 6 feet of social distancing. Now, the memo says that given that we have a vaccination mandate, we can be, our classrooms are deemed safer, and therefore we are using 3 feet of social distancing. But we don't have any basis for assuming that at the moment, we cannot rely on a vaccination mandate because we have no basis for assuming that our students are in fact vaccinated. So it does not seem that not complying with the CDC guidelines is warranted here. Like, we have no reason to veer from that. I mean, that's kind of what I'm understanding. So if I'm wrong, let me know, because the last thing I want to do is make us more nervous about what we're doing. But okay, go ahead, Lois.
First of all, I was told the reason why those documents that came out from Chang yesterday, except in one place, uses the term physical distancing as opposed to social distancing, even though in one place it does say social distancing. Because 3 feet is not considered social distancing because that's a normal distance. So they are well aware of that. And we have not, I need to tell you all that where I'm coming from with this. I was exposed at Norwalk Community College to COVID on August 5th. in my area, in the area where my office is located. And I have been quarantining since then. I've been tested twice, and my anger, I cannot begin to describe how angry I am about all of this. Because for 17 months, I was very careful. I had to come back to the college to be exposed. And there were very few people there at the time. So what do you all think is going to happen next week when all of these people come back? I had to deal with one or two stupid people to get exposed. How many more stupid people are going to be back, including faculty, staff, and students, next week? And we have these insane, quote unquote, policies, which are totally really lack of policies that we're dealing with. That's where I'm coming from. I'm done.
And then Mike?
Did you say Carmen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my understanding though, Lois, is that if you are exposed to somebody and you're asymptomatic, that we don't have to quarantine. At least, like, for instance, at my kids' school in high school, if they're fully vaccinated and they're exposed, they don't have to quarantine. So, I mean, we're vaccinated for a reason. Hopefully the chances of getting it from somebody else is much lower. And I'm just going to kind of just go out on another limb here, because I know everybody, I'm, very concerned. I'm fully vaccinated. So is my whole family. But I will say that I'm not convinced. I mean, even though you can mandate it and it's fine, there are so many exemptions that are being given. Say at UConn right now, it's like 800 students are exempt, and they pretty much exempt them from anything. And I really do feel, I do believe, because it's still under emergency use authorization and it's not approved by the FDA, I personally don't feel like you can just mandate that unless you're like a private entity until it is approved by the FDA. And in the meantime, that's just my thoughts on that.
Mike and then Mary Beth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I understand Lois's anger, and a kind of a interesting example or incident. Yeah, I think either yesterday or the day before, either Thursday or Wednesday, we got a notice from our president to be sure to attend new student day on convocation, right? Convocation for new students, and it was going to be indoor and socially distanced and masked, and they were making change. We do it every year, and they were making changes in the process, like there wasn't going to be a faculty procession, and they were trying to make it safer. So he was encouraging everybody to come, and I think some people were thinking about that. Well, we just got a notice during this meeting that now the new student convocation has been canceled. And I don't say this in a way to mock our president. I don't at all. I think he made a good decision. I'm just saying that's how rapid, things are going to be changing. And when Lois said, how do you think things are going to look next week? I mean, just 2 days ago, we were all supposed to go honors convocation, and now we're not. Not honors convocation, new student convocation. So it's just an example of, I can't imagine how they're going to, and none of the rhetoric that comes out of any of the official leadership, any suggests like there's going to be another possibility. It's all like, well, we know what we're doing and it's going to be done this way. And no plan B mentioned. Like, I just think we're going to have to do what we did last March, right? I mean, March 18 months ago. And I think the Delta variant is going to mean we probably need to close down, but there's no mention of that. And it just seems, I don't know, seems like a lot of wishful thinking. I'm only saying that for information's sake. It wasn't to make any major point, just the idea that things are going to change, I think, as in the next few weeks, pretty rapidly.
Mary Beth?
Yeah, so I was just going to make a point regarding the whole idea that people don't have to quarantine if they've been exposed, if they're vaccinated. And that is a real issue for those of us who have unvaccinated family members still living in our houses, right? So I have an 8-year-old daughter who's medically high risk and can't be vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. Everybody in my house who can be vaccinated is. But if I'm exposed at work, I'm going to have to quarantine for my 8-year-old. So I don't have to necessarily quarantine at work, but I have to quarantine for my 8-year-old because I can't risk giving something to her. So I think that there's, you know, especially with Delta being so contagious, I think there's, you know, last year at this point in time, you know, COVID was very scary, but I feel like it was less scary because we all sort of felt safe in the fact that we could be protected. Most of us were online. Those of us who weren't, the precautions in place were so intense that there was a feeling of safety. And I feel like now at this point, you know, COVID is more contagious than it was this year, last year at this time. Many of us are vaccinated and it does provide some protection, but there's a whole portion of the population that's not vaccinated. And I think that there's so much push to have us all back on campus that we're risking a lot. So, and we're being asked to risk a lot.
Seth, I thought I saw your hand. Did you want to jump in? Go ahead, David, and then I guess, oh, Seth, yeah, go ahead. Okay. David?
Well, just to follow up on what was just said, last year there was maybe 10% of students and faculty on campus. Now there's going to be 90%. Nobody's taken into account the scaling factor of 10 that involves, and what are the implications of that. And so, yes, I'm pretty concerned. I recently was in contact with someone who turned out to have tested positive, and so, you know, I did my first visit to the back of the CVS store when they put the garbage out, where somebody came and gave me the little swab, and I'm fine. I tested negative, but I had taken all the precautions you can imagine in the last year and a half. In the last 3 weeks, I'm already in contact with somebody. So it's obviously going to be an extremely different world out there, and I think there's some sort of public pretend on the part of the administrators, right? Because they know they got to get the students back on ground at the universities in order to fill the residences and in order to get the money from the residence fees, and the pressure perhaps from the food service company, and at the community colleges, it's the enrollment question and so forth, right? So we know that these economic factors have always been there. Last year, the health and safety factors took predominance. At the end of August, it's the reverse now. And, you know, I don't have any crystal ball as to what's going to happen. I do think that the situation in the community colleges with respect to testing of the non-medically exempt, and for that matter, the medically exempt, and also of the non-responders, that's really an important issue that we need to follow up with Terrence Chang. And secondly, I think we need to look into the question of what sort of hybrid methods we should be using in order to diminish the mass packing of the campuses. And, you know, the two that I've brought up, they're pretty minor, but at this point they seem impossible, namely doing group work online when we have the Blackboard Collaborate, which allows you to do it. And secondly, the question of office hours. So those are minor points. I would have perhaps brought them up during the previous discussion, but I'll do that independently. I think it's going to be it's a matter of concern for everybody. I'll stop there.
I am this semester teaching in a classroom that I've always used for this particular course, and the class cap is identical to the class cap always, which confused me until I realized that 3 feet of distancing is not distancing. It's just what decent people do. They don't get in each other's space. So I am lucky in a number of ways. One is that course is not full. And 2, I don't have anyone in my household who is unvaccinated. I I don't know what I would be doing now if I had small children in my home. I would be paralyzed. I would be sick to my stomach. And I know that I have colleagues who feel that way because Delta is different, right? We're hearing about children who are being hospitalized, and we're also hearing about vaccinated people. Yesterday, I heard a story about, I don't know if we can't always trace how we get it, but I heard a story about vaccinated people potentially getting it from vaccinated people. And it's just the uncertainty, right? Just the uncertainty of walking back into something. And I remember my last day, I think I've mentioned this a million times before, but I've never had an experience like this. And I've been teaching for so long, that feeling of teaching and knowing that you're preoccupied with your safety and so are your students. Nothing happens in an environment like that. Nothing productive happens in an environment like that. So I would love for this discussion to turn into something actionable that we could do. At the same time, things are evolving like so quickly. We have more questions than we have answers, that it's not clear. Before, my thought was whatever policies we have, they need to be enforceable, right? And certainly that is the case, right? But I'm kind of at a loss. Like this is a big, kind of overwhelming issue for me personally. Go ahead, Seth.
I think there's so many parallels. I'm listening to everything, and when Bill mentioned earlier how when faculty feel disempowered, how it affects our teaching, and how it affects students feeling empowered, and how they feel about our institutions, and the same thing goes for our safety, right? If we don't feel safe, if we're coming to our colleges and universities anxious, it affects us. Our students feel it. They're already anxious themselves. And there's just a lack of, and again, so we're not trying to be alarmist, which is what unfortunately happens. It's like, we're being alarmed, and we don't want to be alarmist. We want the administration to address honestly and openly the anxiety people have, and do everything they can do to mitigate it. And that's the point. They're not doing everything they can, right? It's not a matter of them being perfect, but it's a matter of are we doing everything we can? And the answer currently is no. So how do we bring these concerns to our administration at a local level with our presidents and deans so they can look at the policies, and obviously at the system level? But it's really the same discussion as I'm listening to everybody. There's this feeling that you can just mandate policy and mandate systems and everything will fall in line, regardless of how the employees and how we and our students feel about it. And, and thinking we're going to meet some kind of economic incentive. And, that hasn't worked, and that's not going to work. So the sooner our administration realizes that, the better.
Mary Beth, I think your hand is up again. Yes?
Yeah, I just have one quick comment. So, and this kind of just goes with what Seth said. So I think the idea of like doing everything we can, I feel like there should be policies in place where we should be as safe as possible when we can be, right? So obviously, if it's important to have classes on campus so students can have face-to-face, right? So that is, questionably worth the risk in some situations so that the students can get that like in-person like instruction that's necessary for some students, some classes, whatever. But for example, our faculty professional development day does not need to be on campus. It does not need to be in person, right? There's no students there. We've demonstrated over the last year that we can work effectively, virtually. And so what's the reason for having people come onto campus for that day? Food will be served in a conference room. People will be taking their masks off. I mean, it just seems like such an unnecessary risk, and there's no student benefit to it. People who aren't comfortable can do the professional development in their office on the computer, but they have to be on campus. There's just, our faculty, we were told our faculty Senate meetings are going to have to be held on campus. Why do faculty have to be there, right? So those are the kinds of things that, like, if we can even try to get like a statements about that. Like, let's be safe in situations where it makes no difference to the students, where it's not going to have any impact on student success. And that makes it's one step better, right? It's one less opportunity for you to be exposed. So that's just kind of another point that I have.
Fran?
And if you read Chang's emails, there is quite a bit of discretion given to local leadership, but that in this case is a big problem actually, because we've got all sorts of inconsistencies. And I think we should ask him, we should have an ask and see how he responds to it. And the ask should center around telework. I agree 100%. Even if we can't do anything about the vaccine exemptions, and there are reasons for that. And Carmen really hit on it. That is the reason that's been given to us, that until these vaccines are permanently approved, we can't really have a mandate. We can kind of pretend we do and encourage people, but we can't enforce it. But the one thing certainly he could influence is the number of people on campus, the number of employees, and he should, in the interest of public health and safety, including our students, including our communities. So I think we should put him on the spot and request that. There's not a reason in the world professional staff shouldn't be working half-time at home, right? Almost all of them have, as Mary Beth said and others, have done this for months and done it well. And ditto, I'm teaching 2 sections on ground. I'll do that. That's fine. But office hours, that's insane. What the hell am I going to do? My office is the size of a closet. Am I going to put the student out in a corridor? And there's talk, well, we could move you into a classroom. Well, I'm going to have my office hours in a classroom. It's crazy. Advising can be done remotely. It has been done remotely for months. All of this should be done remotely as much as possible. And I think we should request that of him.
Make a resolution. I don't want to interrupt here, but I think we were asked about resolutions. Let's have a resolution that what we want at the colleges and the universities is the greatest possible use of online meetings for group work, for office hours, for advising, for professional meetings. I'll make that motion right now.
And I'll second that.
Absolutely.
Can you give me the wording again, Dave?
Yes, that we request that in the context of predominantly on-ground teaching, that the widest possible use be made of online supplements for group work, office hours, professional development, campus meetings, wherever possible.
I'm going to ask you to. I'm going to have to ask you to repeat it.
Yes, that's a bit of a challenge. Okay. Given the context of predominantly on-ground teaching, we nonetheless, or we urge that the greatest possible use be made of online supplements for activities such as group work, office hours, professional development meetings, advising, campus meetings, etc.
Okay. And now we're going to discuss, so we have Bill, Seth, and Mary Beth. I think this will all be relevant to that motion. Yes? And no, Mary Beth? Because we can also.
My hand was up by mistake.
Okay, gotcha. So Bill and Seth and I may have a friendly amendment also. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's a great motion. I think you could word it a little more strongly at the end to mandate, if you will, or to require, rather than to say as much as possible, because that leaves a lot to the imagination. I wasn't going to speak to this motion, so I think I'll just wait and let you discuss the motion first.
Go ahead, Seth. I have a feeling this might get a little bit more expensive. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity while we're talking about this to also speak to telework more broadly for our staff. You know, we don't have to my knowledge, a staff advisory committee, so let's have the FAC pick this up on their behalf. I'll add that I think it's unclear, but I believe right now management can telework, but at the community colleges, staff and faculty can't. So that's obviously a glaring problem. That doesn't take a genius to figure out the hypocrisy in that. So I think this body should I would like this body to also get see if we can get President Chang to weigh in on this important matter and not just leave it up to, I shouldn't say just, but not kind of just say, oh, that's a part of the negotiations. That's a what's the word? A cop out. Let's see if President Chang can have a recommendation or a because it's the right thing to do in the context of safety and everything else we're talking about. So if the motion could be amended to include that, then I think just the spirit of it is, we're not trying to take away, in my opinion, we're not trying to take away the discretion or authority of deaning the president, right? But they're not mandating people have in-person office hours because there's been a problem, right? Or because online office hours are ineffective, right? Because they've done some evaluation of it. They're just sending a mandate to set a mandate, so why not the emphasis be continue online? And if there's a problem with that, then intervene, as opposed to what they're doing, which is just setting a mandate, right? I think, but I fully support how it's worded. I just think that's my understanding of how we're coming to this. So anyway, I would make that suggestion.
We should incorporate that, and I'll make a friendly amendment to my own amendment or whatever to incorporate also and telework for staff where appropriate. If that's a best formulation, I'm open to fine tuning that.
So I have a comment and then what potentially another friendly amendment, and then it's Lois and Mike. So just my first comment is simply that so many state departments have gone back to their mid-May telework agreements. So it's really in line with what's going on, given how Delta is unfolding, and that negotiations process, sure, that is the status, the way that it's usually done. But the time involved, we have staff who have been sitting in offices all through August, Lois being exposed, etc. While it's being sorted out. This just does seem like a special situation in which you could just forego that process and grant it, right? The Department of Public Health is working from home right now. And then, so my suggestion is that memo also specified that faculty cannot unilaterally change the modality of their course. And I don't think faculty ever get to unilaterally do any of these sorts of things anyway. But I do think it's probably healthy to suggest that faculty are invited to advise on the most effective mode of delivery for their courses, given our current situation. And then work it out as necessary, because we do have certain, like at Gateway, for the most part, all full-time faculty are required to, with the exception of one department, teach at least one on-ground course. And in the spirit of sort of consistently applying that rule, I've heard that there are pronunciation classes being conducted in person with masks on, which effectively makes the course, you just can't do it, right? When you could be doing it in front of a camera where someone can actually see your mouth move, right? That would be a wasted semester. So those kinds of conversations need to be invited so that we are actually providing wise, serving our students wisely. So I think if I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in on the sort of wording or the way that I've put it, but I think that faculty should be invited to advise on the most effective mode of delivery for their courses, given the current conditions.
Yep, that's fine.
Right, and accepted, David, the
Oh,
amendment?
yes. Oh,
Go
yes.
ahead.
I mean,
Cool.
you know, there's going to be a lot of resistance from the administrators on the grounds that the students registered for a course which was marked in the catalog as fulfilling a certain requirement.
Right.
But I think on the assumption that we do, in fact, go remote, at least for some period of time in the next few weeks. I mean, that's what most people are saying. I certainly don't have a crystal ball on it.
Right.
This would be relevant for when we return.
Yeah.
And I think, secondly, I just want to make a point about a point that I think Carmen brought up, which is the status of the vaccines, right? According to all of the folks, the talking heads, but this includes Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, the FDA will approve at least Pfizer within the next few weeks, right? And I'm just curious as to why they haven't done it up to now. I mean, you want a level 3 test? Well, how about a 200 million people? I mean, that's, but you know, there may be pressure from Johnson and Johnson going on not to have the BLA approval of the other vaccines before theirs. I don't know, but I think we can expect that at least the Pfizer vaccine will get the biologics license approval in the next few weeks, and that does change things. That will change the tone and the guidance coming from the Attorney General's office. That will activate a thinking process in the governor, who's already agreed to mandatory vaccination with no religious exemption for the MMR for grade schools. So I think that will change the situation for us. But in the meantime, I think we need to look at least some of the elements, and those are the ones, including the one that Kalina just brought up, that we can propose immediately to Cheng, and let's see what he does. We're asking for a modification to his directive. As we
Mike,
see fit,
Jen,
based on
Lois?
our discussion.
Yeah. Lois, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead, Mike.
I wanted to say that I think we might want to have a couple of whereases. One of them, the very things we talked about before we even, that made David say, let's make the motion. One is there are, you know, students, whereas we're interested in the our students' health, you know, physical health as well as their education. And whereas families, students and faculty and staff have families with unvaccinated children at home, or, you know what I mean? Like, give some of the reasons.
Hi, thank you.
And whereas Lambda, you know, I mean, well, whereas, you know, the Delta is worse than, you know, than before, and Alpha, and also whereas, you know, mutations occur spontaneously. I mean, I think we should give the reasons, the health reasons that are pretty, it's hard to kind of hard to ignore them if we lay them out.
Could I ask you, Mike, just to do that, write that up in the chat room? And we'll
Yeah,
incorporate it?
I can get some, and I'd ask Bill to help me out a little bit too, since he's in public health.
Yeah, why don't the two of you work on that with the understanding that we'll include that as the whereases.
It would be great if all of this could be put into the chat. This is getting very, very detailed, and I'm going to have a hard time putting it all together.
I'm going to list the three, I think, topics at least that Mike just mentioned. I would ask that we add a whereas about the CDC guidelines for higher ed, and noting that we diverge from them. And Seth mentioned also physical and mental health. I think that's pretty important. Yeah, so it was Jen, Lois.
And then the resolution, I think, should be broken up into two parts, one for faculty, one for staff. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sorry, I hit send before I meant to. I got it more to write, so. I hit enter to change the paragraph.
Right, I've done that.
Everybody, apologize.
Yeah, we can have the conclusion as one, therefore be resolved one, and then two, for the question of telework where appropriate.
Can I respond to Lois? Why would we have two different resolutions for staff and faculty?
It's the same resolution. It would just be the end of the resolution would just be broken down into wording for faculty and wording for staff underneath the it's the same resolution.
Okay, as long as it's the same resolution, because we are also contractually working at trying to get some teleworking for all of the whereas conditions.
Yeah, no, it's the same exact resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Jen.
I was just wondering, I wanted to ask a point of clarification and then add something also, because I'm just wondering, we make the resolution. Is this something that we'll bring back to campuses to vote on? Because or do we just vote on this? Like, what's the process for that is my first question. And then I'll ask my second.
We would usually just vote on it. And then in the past, we've had college senates also endorse our resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's something you could potentially do, but we usually just vote on it.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is because I know there are a ton of stories with people trying to get ADA accommodations and being like super bullied for those. And also that I think there was something sent out saying that they will no longer accept COVID as an ADA accommodation. And I would like to push back and see the legality of that. I mean, does the board really have the right to talk about what could be, I feel like if you're getting an ADA accommodation, that the person running that office should be there, not just representing the Board of Regents, but representing the faculty person's rights as well. So that's very confusing to me. But I believe that there are plenty of faculty who want to teach in the classroom. And if they would have done it differently, where they said, let's first poll who wants to go back and can we staff the sections that way, it could have been handled much better. And I just feel like there are a lot of people on every campus who have strong opinions. And given how this body is treated, I just wonder if you guys would, if you would want a larger voice of people than just one resolution from the FAC, because I think people are very fired up about this topic and have been mistreated all over the place. And I think if you could capture that, it might help. But, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. The problem is that many of those bodies won't meet for several weeks, and we need to really do this immediately. So I think we can have, our cake and eat it too. We'll have this resolution. I will send it to Cheng. I'll call him up actually after this meeting and say, well, here's our resolution. So we're not going to wait, even past this afternoon to get it to him. And then I think that the Senates can, reword it and rework it and so forth and indicate as well their approval. But we're going back to class within a week. And I think we need to get this immediately to the source of the memo.
Lois and then Seth, but before I forget, so there are a lot of faculty who would actually like to teach on campus. And I think we have to take that into consideration also and be grateful for the fact that they're willing to do that. I think that's wonderful. But I do think that as long as the conditions vary from what the CDC recommends, we have a duty to make that clear to our students, because I know many of my students have children, and I don't know, there's a relationship, I think, of trust with educators where they got to believe that we are being wiser than they could, given, we have a nursing school on my campus, right? So I don't know how appropriate that is, but the folks should actually know what they are exposing themselves to, so that whether or not we are willing, they should also know whether they are willing. Seth, I'm sorry, Lois and then Seth.
Well, a couple of things. One is that we had a chairs and directors meeting yesterday at Norwalk, and I had, there was some questions and directives that have, so a lot of questions that came to me from faculty and staff asking me about what our policies were and procedures, because we weren't hearing anything. And I kept saying, I haven't a clue. And that's why I made up that list of questions and so forth. But at the chairs and directors meeting yesterday, one of the chairs, there was a lot of conversation about this COVID opening. And one of the chairs made a statement about the fact that, am I missing something? My understanding was that all students were going to be required to be vaccinated. So we all feel that there are going to be a number of faculty and staff who are going to walk onto campus next week with the assumption that all students have been required to be vaccinated when the opposite is actually, it's actually the total opposite.
Seth?
That's a great point, Lois. I think that maybe there should be a whereas that speaks to that point. Because to be frank, if the FAC doesn't say it, or others don't say it, the administration isn't going to say it. So there's a lack of awareness of how many individuals, how many students, faculty and staff who are unvaccinated will be on our, in our institutions. I was just gonna. I hear David. I hear your point about getting the resolution to Dr. Chang quickly, and I see the merit in that. However, I also do see the merit in sending something out, because I know there's a lot of individuals of our colleagues who would be happy and really eager to sign on to something like this on behalf, in support of the resolution. So I think I would suggest the resolution go. I'm certainly with that. I wouldn't suggest holding it up, but I think that could easily turn into a petition, sign on to the FAC resolution. And I think we'd get literally thousands of signatures within a week if we thought that'd be helpful. So I just put that out there.
We could immediately turn it into a Google form and send it out to governance leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Can do that by tonight.
I think a petition would be very, 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 very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get it out to Chang immediately, and then go on to that as well. So
Yeah.
we do it all in the same day.
Yeah. And speaking to what both of you just hit on, in terms of so one of the whereases should mention the discrepancy between CDC advice and our practice. And there is only a discrepancy, or at least in the way that it's described in that memo, when we make note of the fact that the mandate hasn't been enforced in a way that we can be assured that our student body is actually vaccinated. So I think we could that could be part of that statement. It's tricky wording. I don't know if you can capture that, Mike, but.
Colina, could you just put into the chat you mentioned the higher ed guidelines and then what you just mentioned now?
Sure.
I forget what the big topics were.
Okay.
My language isn't very sophisticated, I'm afraid, but at least we're trying to get the ideas down, I think.
Yeah.
We'll get there, and we can make the petition version like fancier if we like.
Right. The crude version will be the one that I'll bring up, and then the sophisticated one, Colina, is the one that you'll do for the online. Makes good sense to me. We're writing it on the fly, so I mean, we can do technical editorial changes subsequently. I put something in the chat room, sort of summarizing what I had.
Okay, and go ahead, Carmen. I'm going to attempt to.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, because I look at the CDC guideline, and it says CDC recommends schools maintain at least 3 feet of physical distance between students. So I want to make sure that before you put something in here about how we're going against the CDC guideline, I'm reading it right from the CDC website.
Yeah.
I'll put the link in there. It's for higher ed, CDC higher ed. So that's so K through 12 is 3 feet. And then there's a comment, I think, in there when you get to older students, middle school and high school, the increased age suggests more caution, so cohorting and so on for older students. And then when you get to higher ed, or at least the July 23rd update, now I'm looking for the link right now.
Yeah.
It says 6 feet for unvaccinated. That's what it is. 6 feet for unvaccinated higher ed students. And the issue here is that we have no reason to believe, or we have no evidence to suggest that our students are in fact vaccinated until we're collecting that information. we should be acting with more caution as if they were unvaccinated.
All right, I'm just reading from the CDC website that came out August 5th. It says K through 12, 3 feet.
Right.
Right.
Many of those students K through
Age matters.
are unvaccinated. So I just don't want to say that we're going against that, because technically we aren't at this point. I mean, because kindergartners or elementary, they're not vaccinated and they're recommending 3 feet apart. And this is August 5th it came out. So just to make.
So I think, I'm not sure if it's part of what you're reading, but if you scroll down, when they start talking about middle school and high school students, they say that as age increases, there's an increased need for distancing. And then when it gets to higher ed, I just put the link in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll read it out. It's section 3 of the July 23rd guidance, and it says, guidance for IHEs, institutions for higher education, where not everyone is fully vaccinated. So that would apply to us. Physical distancing means keeping space at least 6 feet, about 2 arm lengths between people who are not from your household in both indoor and outdoor spaces. People who are not fully vaccinated should continue to practice physical distancing. That's basically what it says. That's the current one. I sent this out to the folks at my university yesterday, and I was curious as to what response I would get. And I did get a call from one of the people who's doing I think a very good job about trying to implement the measures that we have available to us. And their position is that there is a guidance from the Department of Public Health, which is 3 feet. Now that one I don't have.
Okay, all right. 'Cause the one I read is updated August 5th. So just again, you guys do what you want, but just make sure it's really is. Yeah.
It's confusing. It's not really well written, and the most recent one for IHEs is July 23rd, and I thought there was another one which I found, but I don't see where I have it here.
Yeah.
So we do need to be a little bit careful about that one, and that's not one where we're going to get any action. They're not going to reconfigure all the classrooms because the FAC just said it should be 6 feet rather than 3 feet. We have a chance on other issues.
Right.
I would not include that in the
I wouldn't
resolution part.
put that 6 feet in there either. I wouldn't put that we're going against CDC guidelines. That's my 2 cents worth. Everything else I completely agree with.
But just to be clear though, Carmen, what you read was for K through 12, yes?
Right. What I'm reading is K through 12, but a lot of half those students are unvaccinated.
Right. So the argument is not that there are unvaccinated people. That's how the CDC frames it, where there are unvaccinated people. So there are unvaccinated people both at the university level and at the grade school level, right? But at the grade school level, they say the fact that you have unvaccinated people is all right at 3 feet, but at the university level, they say that it's their recommendation that it should be 6 feet because of the age difference and presumably the susceptibility to the virus. I think that's probably what's going on.
So also, if I may just interrupt for a moment, wherever CDC guidelines are referred to in this resolution, I think you should use the modifier current CDC guidelines, because if we know anything, they will change. And as young people, very young children, begin to get sick in places where people feel safe right now, there will be changes to what local school systems do, and I think the CDC guidance will have to change as well.
Okay. Yeah, it is confusing because you're right. It does say if you're not vaccinated, it's 6 feet apart. Yeah.
And as I say, I don't think that's something we're going to get. It's pointless to ask for something. They've configured the classrooms on the 3 foot basis, and unless somebody wants to, object to returning to the classroom at all, it's not going to be an action issue. Let me put it that way. But I think we can get some traction on the question of office hours, group work, campus meetings, professional development, Senate meetings. I know that, for example, at Central, Senate meetings are going to be online. I think Fred can confirm that. I made a request to change my class to hybrid, predominantly on ground, because students were sending me emails. I have those emails saying, you know, I don't want to be on ground for all these classes. What are you going to be doing online? And, you know, I was preemptorily turned down by some recently appointed associate dean on the grounds that the designation and the catalog cannot be changed. If I have any problems with that, go see HR to get an exemption or to get an accommodation.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's impossible for them to change the spacing of our classrooms, but I think the divergence from what's
we can note it. We can
recommended
note it.
is underwrites the legitimacy of concern, right? And the reason that there should be some flexibility allowed for us to, right? Because I think, and again, they're doing this just like Jen mentioned, right? They're doing this while everything's moving underneath them, and like there's so much going on. It's very, very difficult. I would not want that job at all. But you know, that kind of I think that was appropriate at one point, but it's not necessarily appropriate now, right? And there was the assumption of the vaccine mandate, which is a board policy. The board policy exists. The problem is that the board policy is not being enforced sufficiently to ensure that our student body is actually vaccinated. Go ahead, Mike, and then Bill.
Yeah, Mike Shea. Oh shit! Sorry.
Oh yes, Mike Shea. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I think I was told not only is it 3 feet, it's 3 feet from the middle of one desk to the middle of the other desk. Is that is that what you heard? I mean, I'm pretty sure at Southern,
No.
That's what chairs were told. So
No.
it's the middle of one person or the middle of the desk to the middle of another desk. I mean, desks are barely, you might as well not change anything, which they didn't. It doesn't mean anything at all when you think 3 feet to middle of the desk to middle of the desk. That's probably closer than most people normally are. Is that Bill? Is that what we heard at Southern?
Yeah. 3 feet on center from my nose to your nose, from my viral load to your.
Yeah, but it's sideways even. So that, I mean, you know, I don't know, it's crazy. Doesn't make me feel very safe.
Yeah. All right, do we have our whereases in order? I threw one in there. I apologize. I was talking and writing at the same time, and I'm not any good at that.
Polina?
Yes?
May I just say one thing?
Sure.
I heard what you said about not wanting to be in the position of having to make all these decisions, not wanting that job. It's very difficult because at the system level, of course, we would like a system that also is looking out for, for numbers and dollars and cents and that sort of thing. So there's a balancing act that goes on here. And we're always taking risks, and we get into our car to drive to the campus. But this is a much more serious risk than we are used to facing on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know how this could get into the resolution, but somehow I think it has to be communicated that the faculty and staff on our campuses sacrificed a great deal over the last year and a half to make sure that our campuses kept delivering, our educational mission, right? A lot of people in the administration worked on this as well, but we were there to work with the students front line, counsel them, teach them, etc. I don't think this is intended as a punishment for doing the right thing. But I think there should be some consideration of faculty and staff that we did do the right thing, and that while we're concerned about the well-being of students, we need to be concerned about the well-being of everybody on campus. And this resolution, by the way, not only protects the faculty and staff, but it protects our students and their families and their communities as well. If you understand community spread, you know that. I'm not sure that I'm being very clear, but I think what I'm trying to say is we have been a part of the solution of keeping our campuses alive during the last year and a half. People should be listening to our concerns and what we're saying.
I just want to add,
that in the chat.
can can I just add that I think it should be also about, it should be about others and community. It shouldn't be about, oh, we're trying to protect. I put in one whereas of the faculty and staff, and I'm trying to, by staff, I mean, I don't know if we should say and administration. I'm thinking of everybody, right? I think we need to make it clear what Bill is saying, that it should be community safe, and we want to keep our students' families safe and their children. I mean, like you said, Kalina, if you had an 8-year-old, you know, an unvaccinated child at home, it must be incredibly anxiety producing. So I think we should make it about them and about community and not about us. I think it's a bad decision. I think we should point out that it's a questionable decision from a community health standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, are you able to just kind of craft that, Mike? I'm trying to do it and then I keep losing track. Lois, and then is your hand still or again up, Carmen?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Okay. So Lois, and then just so you know, we have gotten to 4:06, but I hope it's okay to extend this just a little bit more so that we can get something out of here. And I think we're very close, right? To at least the kind of resolution that might be helpful in the next couple of days. Is that right?
Well, are you meaning that we don't have to finish it today? We'll have a chance to work on it beyond this, right?
Well, I think we need to approve the resolution, right?
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whereas
we
we can tinker with.
Yeah.
It's really hard to during a meeting, especially as, you know, we head towards the 5 o'clock
I know.
hour. So let's have the resolution. What I propose now is just, let's vote on the resolution with the understanding that the whereases that Bill has provided that are available in the chat line will be as well reworked by him and Mike Shea into a final form for distribution to the various campuses. The resolution itself, Cheng doesn't need, you know, all the whereases. He knows what's going on, right? What we need to communicate to him is we are looking for this relief and this option for an online supplement to the on-ground teaching.
Lois?
Right. I agree with it, but I just want to agree with Mike and Bill, and I think that we need to emphasize that we're looking at this as a social contract. That we're here, that we're there. We're not here only to protect ourselves. We're here to protect the whole community, and it is a social contract. But beyond that, I just need some, I'm confused. I need some basic wording. What's the resolution going to be?
Okay,
I think the basic wording, you can use what David put in the chat earlier. And then
Where is it?
It's, yeah, let me find it in the chat myself. Because it's going to remove the chat and make it visible to you. I like a 1/4 inch here.
Found at least one. In support of return to on-ground classes, we support the widest possible use of online capacities for supplementary activities such as group work, office hours, professional development, and other campus meetings.
How far down is this?
Well, you can cut and paste it and send it in an email to Lois, can't you? If you got it there, Kalina?
Sure. Let me do that.
So then Bill and Mike are going to work on the whereases. Is that the...
Yes.
Okay.
I hope that's okay with Bill.
Well, Bill is required. He's the public health guy.
Yeah. All of a sudden, his speakers aren't working.
Bill has to do this. We need his voice in here.
We had a 2-part resolution though. So I have on the context, right? I I had suggested that faculty are invited to advise on the most effective delivery mode. Is that a separate,
Yes.
okay?
You want to say that again? Faculty are invited
Invited to advise
to advise.
the most effective mode of delivery for their courses in the context of current conditions
And future conditions.
of the unfolding COVID
Okay.
I don't want to say unfolding, the evolving COVID pandemic.
Ever evolving.
Okay, share. Can you see it now?
If you're invited to
Is that visible too? I can't see it from my end.
yes.
Okay.
Context. Okay. There it is.
Oh, and we had to add here, I'm sorry, telework opportunities.
Yes. Because we're missing the part where staff actually participate in the working out of what it is they can do effectively and how.
Well, faculty and staff are invited to the effective mode of delivery for their courses
And services.
and their office work
Services.
and their services. Thank you.
Services.
Services in the context of I would just knock out current conditions, the evolving COVID pandemic.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, there's the resolution.
All right, hold on, hold on.
Possible? I was going to say, is it possible to, instead of support the widest possible use, but request? Like we're asking for this, not just we're supporting it, but we're asking for it, so that we can maybe feel like we're going to get an answer for them to say, yes, we can do this.
Done. You don't know how much I want to get out of here by 5 o'clock. I got to feed the horse. Remember, 5 o'clock, boss has to get fed.
I'm letting you down today, David.
This is known as the categorical imperative from Immanuel Kant. It's Buzz's imperative.
How about
And
suggest?
He's got a clock in there somewhere. I don't know where, but he knows.
How about suggest? Or encourage, or
request and encourage. Whatever.
I'd make it even stronger. How about call for? I mean, if we request, that's a request. We're asking. We really are doing more than asking. We're pointing out that this needs to be done.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. It should be stronger.
There it is.
All right. So that's it.
Can I interject just for the telework aspect?
Yes.
I think telework is I would like to see if telework can be put in its own statement. Because right now telework is under the context on-ground classes, which kind of orients it to faculty to some, if not.
Return to on-ground. Well, what we can say is we can say on-ground work, including classes. But that's not a supplementary activity. Every classes should be here.
How about, because I mean, when it comes to staff, they are not returning to anything. They've been sitting in those offices for quite some time. But it is in the context of repopulating our colleges to a greater extent than we have since this pandemic began, right? Like part of the significance is that how many people will be on campus.
Well, why don't we just say what about if we say in here, what am I looking at now? Something totally different.
let's keep it broad. The widest possible use of telework opportunities for all members of our community. I mean, just let's be clear that something like that. Or just say for non-teaching faculty, to be explicit. Maybe we should be explicit for non-teaching faculty.
Or staff.
Non-teaching faculty.
No.
Oh, yeah, that's
No.
right. Sorry, we're faculty.
No.
Non-teaching faculty. I got it.
Thank you.
I've just been remembered what
Yep.
administrative faculty, and that's how.
Right. Correct. Thank you.
David, can I ask?
Well, actually, let's because some at the community college folks don't use that. How about non-teaching faculty and staff? Because I think
That's good.
staff may not see
Non-teaching
themselves.
faculty / how about non-teaching faculty / staff?
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Okay, how's that now?
Non-teaching faculty / staff, because and staff, non-teaching faculty are staff.
Okay.
Do we want to include administrators in there, or do we want to assume that staff?
No, well, they're going to look after themselves.
We don't care about administrators.
Well, it's not that. It's not part of our mandate. Faculty Advisory Committee.
How about we
That's a
don't
good
care
point.
about administrators?
I did have another question, David. When you said group work, did you mean student group work in class?
Yes, student group work.
We might want to say class group work then.
Okay.
I think otherwise people might assume it's okay.
Is there a reason for this order? Should number 3 come first? Talk
I
about,
agree with Bill. Yeah, I do. I agree with Bill.
and then supplemental activities, supplemental to classwork. And then number 3 now is for those who aren't teaching also.
It's more the general to the specific.
Yep, there it is.
Faculty and staff.
Good work, people.
All right, I'm catching it.
Let's go for the vote.
One
I'm
last
catching it.
change in the context of is this campus repopulation? I'm just thinking about staff, campus population and return, or just to
I've added it.
make it broader.
Yeah.
In the context of
Let me just make this a little bit smaller so it all fits on one screen.
And
Yeah, I
as I
need it.
look-
I
As
need
I
it.
look at this, I don't think we should add it now, but I really am just impressed by the fact that we have so much expertise among us and that we haven't really tapped on this necessarily. And it would be really nice to have said that we have, professionals among us that can advise on this, but whatever.
Well, can I suggest we pass to the vote now, unless there's
do it.
That could go in the whereas, Colina.
Yes, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
do that.
that's good.
Okay.
So the motion,
I'm wondering what you have in the context of return to on-ground classes and campus repopulation, and because I love the fact that we're addressing public health concerns. Is there something that we can put there and addressing public health concerns?
Yeah, I think that
Or the
makes-
current public health concerns?
Shouldn't
Yeah.
that go in the whereas?
I think not. I think what we're trying to say is what Mary's saying is that it's that idea of the community again.
Right.
And I think that shouldn't just be in a whereas, that should be in the resolution.
In the first sentence, then, in the context of return to on-ground classes and campus repopulation and the concerns that we have for social.
And public health concerns for the community.
Right,
Public
and
health
public
concerns
health concerns for the community. I like that.
okay.
Thank you, David.
Number 3 should also be we call for.
Yes.
All right, are we done? I have taken, I don't know how many screenshots of this.
Well, here it is on the
must have
screen. So
20
the
I must
microphone-
have 20 screenshots.
Exactly what's on the screen. So that'll
Yes.
relieve you of having to try and figure it out anymore.
Right. So we're voting on what's on the screen. And I think we do need 2 words at the beginning of 1 also, just so that it reads properly. Are we calling for faculty and staff? No, we request that faculty and staff are invited. We
Yes,
recommend that
I
faculty
think
and staff are invited.
yes. I think 1 and 2 and 3 have to be, 1 has to say we call for the same thing. We call for faculty and staff to be invited.
Invited.
All right, one more change.
Sorry, Lois.
It's on the screen.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, there it is.
Alrighty. So,
Wait, we call, one sec.
yeah.
We called for it. Maybe I grabbed it. Oh, 2B. That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
I'll send this to you as well as an email.
All right. Thanks. Thanks,
In
Steve.
the recording, we'll have it.
You might want to make faculty small letter.
Yes.
And I'm taking a snapshot of this now and sending it to you also, Lois.
Do we have a motion? I'll move that we or second whatever this so we can vote. Do we have a
This is
the amended, is this not the amended version
Okay.
of David's original motion?
I think so,
As
yeah.
long as that was voted on.
So now let's vote on adopting this resolution that we see on the screen, with the understanding that Mike Shave, Bill Ferracos, and anyone else who remembers something that needs to be added, just sort of refine the whereases that we listed during this meeting and append them after the fact. So all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Okay, so it's unanimously passed. And David, you'll get right on the phone with.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, great.
I'll give them time to have supper.
And I will,
With the horse? With the horse?
Well, first of all, Buzz has to get fed. Then
Yeah,
exactly. Terrence Chang does deserve his supper as well. So
is he clambering up the stairs as we speak?
we have a family of hawks that also live on on his fence. They find it a really good vantage point for pouncing on little crawling things.
Oh,
David, before you leave to feed your, what's his name? Your horse?
Buzz.
Buzz? If you can just modify that first sentence to read like the third statement, non-teaching and staff, the way it's written, so it's consistent.
And, oh yes, and.
Yeah, just the way you have it on the third paragraph, just because that's how we identify ourselves.
Okay.
Where are you making that change?
Do you know how you just did the slash staff?
Right.
I think on the third statement.
Yeah.
But isn't number 1 just mainly about the faculty who are teaching in the classroom?
No, you have staff in there. And services, and
okay.
services is also added in there.
Okay, I couldn't see.
We can disentangle it.
I'm sorry, David.
That's okay.
And
I
Lois,
just thought it would have been just a quick fix.
Buzz says that's it. No more fiddling.
Lois's face says, "I'm done."
Get to the
And
hay.
saying he's done.
Lois knows this when her cat needs.
My cat, see, at least he's not as big as Buzz, so it's okay.
Yeah, when you're
I'm surprised he hasn't given us his backside yet.
Yeah. he's working on that now.
You better hope that David doesn't feed it to the hawks.
No, they get along very well.
They're good Marshall Airport.
all right, so we've got 2 things and they're very quick and then adjourn. I know that at last check, everyone except all the universities, except for Western, had elected their FAC reps for next year. I'm gonna just
Excuse me, Colleen, I'm sorry, but can someone mute themselves that has the television on? I'm sorry, because I have a hard time hearing you.
Got it, yes. So I'll say it again. All the universities except for Western at last check already elected their reps. Charter Oak has elected theirs. And I know who the reps are for all community colleges except for Quinnebog, but I know that they conducted an election. So we are ready to go, and we just have to collect 150 word sort of statements from each one of these. We don't have them from everyone, and we can run the election probably by the end of September, which means that we could be welcoming in and transitioning in new members by, before this semester ends, which is always a good transition. Nice. However, we're not going to be transitioning that many people because a lot of us are sticking around. So I'm really happy about that. So that is pretty much it. Oh, and SWOPE is selecting January in 20. Okay. Myrna, it didn't even occur to me that you wouldn't be around. I forgot. Or that you would even be elected. So let's for January 22. Okay, I got you. So it'll be a transition midterm kind of thing.
Right. We're going to conduct, they assured me that they're going to run the vote sometime this fall, probably within the first month.
Yeah.
And then my understanding is that the new selected member will be officially on board by January. Is that correct? But they can attend meetings up until January, so they can transition.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I mean, you can start participating at any time, but they, so new members can't vote until next January, and then you will have to decide when the actual transition happens.
Thank you.
All right, great. So, so that's pretty much the elections news, and old and new business.
I just put information in the chat about also election. Southern didn't only in the spring they only voted for one person, which was me. There wasn't anybody else on there, so we're going to run an alternate in the fall.
Okay, I thought Sean Grace isn't from Southern.
No, he is, but his term is up, so another person's going to run.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, and no other old or new business?
Just to mention that at Eastern, I'm still the alternate, and I will be the alternate until December. The regular representative resigned today.
Nikki, okay.
Nikki, yeah, I was so sad too.
Okay.
And they run another election, but I like being an alternate because I get to hear and people don't care if I vote or not, so it doesn't matter. Very exciting meeting today. Thank you very much.
It sure is. All right, thank you. Do we have any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. And seconds?
You don't need a second for
We don't. All right. Thank you all.
Nice
I'll stop the
weekend.
recording now.
Colina, can you leave this on for a second so I can talk to Bill?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.